Hello, friends. My name's host Derek, and I'm here to say I'm going to share this document. Hey, it's called TVT, or this versus that. Probably not going to read it out loud, but I may at the beginning, prior to getting any participants here. Let me switch to live chat, top chat. I will paste this link. So here's this document that I'm basically saying this is kind of the idea of the video, I guess, or the topic of the live stream. So these things, which is rarely to never. But the point being that we can understand much of life through dichotomies of some kind or another, and some of the dichotomies or ways of breaking down human experience are listed in that document. And it starts with the most basic level there, which is it lists 12 things people care about: physical discomfort, sex, status, predictability, fairness, authenticity, opportunity, motivation, sensation, distinction, efficacy, and validation. You might be able to think of other things, but those are reward areas for sure. You might say sex goes under sensation, but I think it's its own category. Status is meaning social status. Fairness is fairness. They all seem to be distinct to me, and there's 12 that I've listed here. You might say sensation includes physical discomfort as well, but I would argue that the distinction between being diseased in some fashion, diseased. Excuse me, Red, that's my guitar. You don't need to peck on that, okay? I'm going to put this link again. I don't know if people who arrive late see links that were put earlier, so I might put it a few more times even. So let me go through some of the important chat comments already accrued. Namely, Matthew Alistair's mentioned that he's first, and his life now has meaning. Angantier understandably congratulates him on this, because to have transcended from a meaningless life to a meaningful one is substantial. Naturally, Matthew expresses his gratitude for Angantier's noting of congratulations. And then Matthew points out that Red wants to jam. Red does want to jam. She's always wanted to jam.
Just not on the instruments.
She wants to jam with the baka de bak bak bak. And a brr, brr. That's one of her favorite songs. She's got a few favorites. She's got bark, bark, and she's got bark, 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 which is one of her favorites. You know. So she's really getting sassy. She'll give us the full sentence, the full bark, 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 bark.
Can you hand her to me? She's ready for bed.
She is a great lyricist. Oh, Kim says she's ready for bed. I have to hand her to Kimberly, who's conveniently placed my guitar in smashing range of the chair. Come here, Red. Mama wants you. Here you go, Mama. Here's a chicken for you. She's like a Pokemon character named Bakuman. Can you close the door behind you, Kim?
I'm coming back out.
Okay, but still, to preserve warmth. As with all Pokemons, all she says is her syllables of her name. So, Bak, Bakachu, Achu, Chu, Bak. Poet meets policeman, which is the band name, the Poet Policeman. Is that really a band, or is that you're just suggesting it's a good band name? And that'll probably be a more attractive topic for people to participate in is, what's a good band name? What makes a good band name? The Poet Policeman is Red's group. Oh, she's Red in the Poet Policeman. Possibly. I have to think about that. That's a possibility. I have to talk to her about it and see what she says. I haven't actually asked her the name of her band yet. I probably should. Really? Double live stream? What? Yeah, well, once again, I'm being lazy. I don't really feel like making a proper video, which takes a little bit more effort and thinking, and I feel more at risk of failure and somehow. And so, I don't know. I only have a minimal amount of amphetamines in me. Now, with such a small turnout and it being Saturday night, I would expect it to be a small turnout. Although it's not that late, but people are probably, that's part of why it would be a small turnout. 10 o'clock on the East Coast, 7 o'clock on the West Coast, approximately. We're looking at a lot of time. A lot of people are going to be out and about, drinking alcohol, dancing on the dance floor, raving all night long with their ecstasy and their pacifiers. But for those of us not so inclined, there are alternatives that are perhaps more gratifying. This being one for me, for sure, is an alternative that's more gratifying than raving all night long with a pacifier and ecstasy. Not that I'd necessarily turn down ecstasy if it were handed to me, but I'd probably pass on the pacifier. And I wouldn't want to do it regularly, that's for sure. Sunday afternoon there in Kiwi land, New Zealand, land of the kiwi. Not just the fruit, also the bird. Don't make no mistake about it. Kiwi birds are as common as the ground squirrel in New Zealand. When you open up a cherry pie, for example, you have to shoo all the kiwi birds away from your pie before eating it. That's how many kiwi birds there are in New Zealand. Well known fact. They're a vermin like locusts. People are constantly having their crops, their homes, their children and wives ravaged by kiwi birds. Just a constant thing in New Zealand. You just got to get used to it. Ow, my anus hurts. Kiwi birds, huh? Yeah. They really went at me this morning. Good thing I'm an anal wreckage anonymous. Okay, so, apparently people think going out on the town and partying is more fun than this live stream. Fine. Do you plan on making a second book? Where can I get the first one? What does the mean by the first one? Which book are you talking about? I actually have written several or more book or bookette things. First thing I ever wrote, that you might call a book, was called The Megalomaniacs. It's a novella. It's about 120 pages long, and it's pretty fun read, I guess. It's it's a little more juvenile because I was in my mid-20s, I think, when I wrote it. And then after that, I wrote a what do you call it? I wrote a grammar book. I wrote a critical thinking book. Those are more like textbooks for middle school. Oh, the MBTI book. Yeah, I'm going to write a second one. I'm going to write, because that MBTI book right there that I'm reading is basically a compilation of independent documents. It's not really, it doesn't have a singular arc to it or purpose to it. The document that I shared in this chat before already, which I'll share again, is something called This Versus That, which I would like to use kind of as an umbrella for another book about functions and individuals and people that's more structured, like it says here.
How about an umbrella for a rainy day?
Okay, that too, to keep the rain off of you, of course. So I try to go down a bunch of distinctions that mark kind of like top level distinctions: instantiated, uncollapsed, meaning, sensation, status, process, interested, disinterested, conditional, causal, field, object. I talk about dimensions, actions, epistemologies, frames, ontologies, and like this is what you might call the progression towards meta-rationalism is number 6 in that document there. The world and the people is always one: existence, aliveness, satisfaction, distinction between experiential instances, fluid legitimization metrics, how life differs from that which is merely physical or merely metaphysical, distinction, object permanence, constancy of self, shape constancy, agency, causality. You can't see this on the video, so I probably shouldn't be reading it. But regardless, the point is that document has a better shape to it for a book than the previous one. Though for topics, it would also cover a lot of things that aren't really the same topic, and try to subsume cognitive functions basically with a better metaframe, or more complete metaframe. So that's what I would like to work on, I guess, next is something like that. YouTube and chill, right? YouTube and chill is like Netflix and chill, but there's no date sitting next to you. It's either your significant other or you're just sitting home by yourself, probably. Or it's what your husband is saying, get away from that thing. Come hang out with me. And you're going, I'm busy. That possibility too. Let's see. Are those 3 penises by my head? There? No. These are
Arms of the body.
oh, those are people. Okay, those are people in the painting who are cheering on.
Give me the broom. Your back
They're-
is horrible.
They're cheering on Raul Diego because he's receiving the Genius Award. I'm sorry, the Genius Award at the annual Genius Awards, where he is recognized as most genius of all the geniuses. Okay. Do you believe in the biblical version of God? Well, what exactly does that mean, Brenda Lee? I'm sorry, let me ask the question again. Do you believe in the biblical version of God?
Or NLP.
Probably no. I mean, I don't know. God is something that I don't try to define too much. I think it's counterproductive to faith, perhaps, to try to define it very much, because, of course, the more you define it, the what did you break? Oh, you just knocked over squirt hands? Okay. They're supposed to do this after the shoot or before the shoot or something. Really? Says Johnny Two Guns.
That's what I get for trying to wipe the board with wine.
Meat pies are like burgers are here. Is that what they say? Meat pies are all like, burgers are here. Come get some. What you mean is in New Zealand, you've got meat pies, which people eat instead of hamburgers. Same thing with Russia. I've been to Russia, and they have meat pies all over the place. Everyone's like, if you got a pie and you got a meat, then you got a meat pie. If I heard you correctly in a prior video, you said you believed in God, like God is in the one described biblically, or just a higher power. Well, I probably didn't say I believe in God. I probably said I'm a deist, which would imply that I believe in God. I have said that before, but I tend to differentiate between the statement I believe in God and the reality, which is I practice faith as an exercise or a behavior, and I don't affirm God's existence as an argument, because it's not an argument I can win. So, do I believe in dragons? What do you mean believe in them? Do I think that there are actual dragons besides Komodo dragons that are flying around and breathing fire over the mountaintops? No, I don't think so. I think it's very unlikely. But yeah, if you ask me, do I believe in God? Depending on the context of the question, I'll probably answer yes. But most people, when they say do you believe in God, what they really mean is, are you willing to affirm God's existence? And the answer to that is, I'm potentially willing to, but I'm not in the habit of doing so, and I'm at least as willing to negate God's existence if you want to have that argument. because the argument is very different than the practice or behavior of faith. Am I a dragon? No, I'm not. Am I a fan or familiar with Talking Heads? What type do you think David Barron is? Probably some kind of NTP, probably an INTP. What are your thoughts on agnosticism and atheism? What are your thoughts on agnosticism and atheism? My thoughts are this, that I'd rather see somebody affirm or negate, either be an atheist or a deist. Agnosticism isn't an argument. You could say it's an argument that says we ought to prefer ambivalence regarding the question over either answer. But I still don't really find that an argument because there's no inherent reason to prefer ambivalence except for the fact that you'd say, well, we don't have enough information to make a firm decision. But if you choose to live in a world of ambivalence, then you have no capacity to delegate certain questions off to magical thinking, which I think is kind of necessary. Okay. Breathing fire or just big clouds? They could just breathe big clouds. They breathe them in or out? Is anarchism an NTP thing? I'm not an anarchist for certain. I would not affirm anarchy at all. I think anarchy is a silly notion because it implies that every individual ought to be independently responsible for their own crime responses, and that's silly. That's no way to run a civilized society. You know, that's not a place where you want to go out in the streets and do your thing. It's not. There's a presumption that everyone's going to be cool somehow. Everyone will just be cool. No, we have ample reason to think the contrary. It's not that I think people are naturally evil or anything. It's just that we have plenty of examples of taking advantage of being afforded too much liberty in various contexts. And so that has to be constrained, at least insofar as it affirms rights of individuals. So I don't think anarchy is an NTP thing. I think it might be an NFP thing. I think NFPs are more likely to be socialist, kind of Occupy Wall Street-y. If you call that anarchism, I don't know. Maybe you do, and maybe one would be appropriate to call it such. I wouldn't deny that like too strongly, for sure.
There's my art for the night.
Beautiful, darling. You're like a beautiful, fresh angel flower, a beautiful angel flower. That's what you're like. Okay? You hear me, Kimberly? You hear my words of affirmation?
Mm-hmm.
You really take El Diego picture as well, I think. It'll be fine. I don't really need to have that Raul Diego picture there. Let's see here. Agnosticism fits absurdist theory well. It's not humanly possible to know one way or the other if God exists, but it is humanly possible to behave as though you do, right? So really the question is, how do you want to critique that behavior? The behavior enables certain kind of next level post-contradiction reconciliation modalities. Like, okay, well, if I'm going to be able to incorporate magical thinking into my rationalism, even though it's all meaningful of the word contradictory to it, then what am I doing there? Metacognitively is an interesting question, right? It doesn't take over. I don't use it for any kind of justifications. I don't use it to make arguments. I don't justify claims with it, but I have it in my arsenal of personal experiential modalities of being. So then, I would say regarding absurdist theory, it's rejecting the particulars too much. It's viewing the self, as a character that must maintain a certain distance or else be tricked. It's insane. There's theories of institutions that would solve crimes absent of government. There just wouldn't be an institution without the monarch. The monopoly on use of force, or many anarchists just claim this. You mean an institution with the monopoly on use of force? But that's ridiculous. I guess the thing is, it's always true that the monopoly on use of force is somewhat localized. So the U.S. monopoly on use of force in the United States doesn't extend into Canada, for example. And if you had smaller city states, then it would be true that the monopolies on use of force would be centered in more localized wells, and that would be a good thing. I'm in favor of increased localism. I think the United States is currently an upside down triangle. The top level of government should receive the smallest amount of taxation and have the least impact on the people's direct lives, and that's the federal government. And then the most local should have the most taxation and the most impact. But instead, it's the other way around. So, what are your thoughts on AA, NA, and CBT for substance abuse recovery? What's CBT? You mean like from pot? My thoughts on AA and NA is I quit drinking by Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did it by following people's instructions and doing what they said and trying to take from the program what I could to stay sober. And part of that involved this faith-based behavior that I still engage in and still find useful. So I think ultimately the key to quitting anything is making a firm and real decision that you're going to quit it and coming to terms with what that means, which is not ever doing it again and really coming to terms with it. And then for me, it meant building a bunch of TI walls around all possible excuses where I might say, okay, it's okay to drink again. So let's see. Do you think sociopaths, psychopaths are essential to humanity's survival in certain situations, as there is a reason for them? And there's a reason for them. Well, I don't necessarily buy this whole explanation of why things exist because they're purposed in some fashion. That purpose would imply a purposer. And that purposer is either evolution, quote unquote, which I don't buy because it doesn't explain things adequately for a variety of reasons I don't want to go into at the moment. But and I don't buy that. I guess you could say, well, if you took a deist standpoint that God made sociopaths for a reason, or I don't know, the whole purpose frame there seems odd. It may just be instantiation of emergent phenomena that just are emergent phenomena of chaotic systems and not necessarily meaningful in any purpose frame. So that's a possibility. John Burke says, Eric, stop using your neighbor's Wi-Fi or start a GoFundMe to get you a plan. Well, actually what happened, John, was during the rather torrential rains here in Los Angeles in the past recent few days, Laverne, San Dimas area where I live had
rolling blackouts.
Rolling brownouts, rolling blackouts. Some parts of the city were blacked out for as much as 24 hours. We only got these periodic 5-second collapses of electricity. The lights would go off long enough just to reset the internet box and the cable box.
We got 15 inches and we
did not get 15. Oh. That's for the whole year since October.
That's fine. I'm trying to clarify. What are we used to getting?
Okay, we already have more rain than the normal rain year for the whole year, but we already have it after just half of the year. And as far as the month goes, we're almost twice average rainfall for February, and we were over average for January as well. So it's great, but this old house, in addition, is got a couple of leaks in it and stuff. So I don't think that had anything to do with the electrical problems, but
actually, our old house is holding up very well. It's our little add-on. We haven't had any problems.
Right, and the old house is fine, but the add-on has caused some problems in the garage here. My belief is God is the universal consciousness experiencing itself. Okay, I mean, is it an entity distinct that you can communicate with, or no? If it's not, then it's not really God you're talking about, I don't think. I think we can at least make that clarification that in some sense God has to be meaningfully understood as God is some kind of interested entity. Basically, they say the state is not essential to law and there could be a market for law. I'm on the fence about it, but theoretically it sounds better. look, no matter how you want to structure it, somebody's got to be responsible for enforcement of the market rules, of the law, of whatever. Somebody's going to be pointing guns at somebody when they need to have justice for crimes committed. You can try to parse that. You could try to pass that out amongst different groups. You could, but how much better is it really? So I don't know. At some level, you're going to have rules and laws that have to be established and maintained and made and enforced. And people are going to have some capacity to adjust to new situations on the fly, which means the capacity to make new rules. And you're right back where you started from. Let's see. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Oh.
You look like teachers to Epidemic.
You two sort of look like teachers to me. I don't know. But you sort of look like a professor I had, and Kim looks like a kindergarten teacher I had.
Except for Kimberly hates kids.
Probably just some jumbled SI memory. Kimberly doesn't hate kids. It's ridiculous.
I don't really like them, though.
I mean, I agree government isn't accountable to its customers, quote unquote. But the problem is that it is accountable to its customers half the time because people don't get the direct correlation between what they want and what they're paying for. So if people's taxes were voluntary, like by using a given government service, you enabled a tax to kick in. Like, okay, yeah, I want to use the DMV. Okay, well, then that's going to cost you this much per year. And if you don't want to use the DMV, well, I guess you can't drive, That's kind of how it is in the status quo. At least you know what you're paying for the DMV. But I want the same thing, like
medical insurance.
If I want to use government Medicare, then tax should kick in. Now, that won't work, right? Because the people who are on disability and shit aren't paying anything in tax. They're just getting free money from those who are working. So, but at least if you do it that way, then you drive home the point of how absurd it is. So, Edemic, I can't say your name, it's too hard. ES, I'm going to call you. I am a teacher. I'm a debate coach, and I've taught for
not a kindergarten teacher.
I've taught for a number of years. Kim's a motherly type of person, not that kind of kindergarten teacher vibe, but she's actually sharp as a razor, a rusty razor blade.
Rusty razor blade on the back of your nape. I'm a hairdresser. Boom.
John Brooks says, shit just happens. There's no purpose. Okay. But I mean, obviously everything that does happen is purposeful as far as your perspective goes, right? So if I go up and punch you in the face, you don't go, well, shit just happens. No purpose. You go, you intentionally punched me in the face, or you just hit me back in the face, or you probably, since you're probably an ESTP, you probably punch me as I'm getting ready to punch you because you're 10 times as fast as me or something. But the point is, you don't just go, that was purposeless. Almost never do you think that about anything. I'm on my second blunt of the day. What's your count, Notorious He? Well, I don't know.
15 minutes.
Pulled a lot of balls already today. I wouldn't say it's every 15 minutes, but I pulled a lot of balls. And in honor of that question,
balls you couldn't count.
I will pull another one though, just to make sure I'm okay. That was kind of a weak one. I better pull another one. I would like to see these things out. I'm not things up. I need like a manager or something, or a PR person, or a press secretary or something.
Up against the secretary?
Mm-hmm. I'm Josh. I'll be your new press secretary. No.
I want a little girl. I need her to be 19 and have fancy boobs.
Hi, Derek. Well, hello there, April.
April, it's your daughter's best friend.
I just picked the name from random. Just picked the name from random.
Random, just because she's been in every one of your dreams.
I think a lot of times what makes people change their bad habits, if you consider drinking a habit, is the effects of the usage being more negative than positive. It starts out positive usually. I agree with you. It ultimately becomes utilitarian calculus, or if you choose to, sometimes people will choose to just drink themselves to death and go, I don't care what the calculus is. My life's already wasted. I've already fucked it up, so whatever. But I agree. Ultimately, it's a utilitarian thing. If you hit a bottom enough that's low enough that makes you change, you'll change. It might have been very low. Spirituality suggests we are connected and separation is an illusion. No, that's just an NI bias. Particularism tells us that we are each an animal self. If in fact it were the case that we were connected and separation was an illusion, and when I broke my leg, you'd feel actual pain rather than just sympathetic metaphysical pain. If even most Republicans want higher taxes on the rich, polls show 70% of Americans at the time we do so, no, because it'll make everybody poorer. There's a mistake in thinking that somehow more taxes on the rich makes things fairer. It doesn't make the poor any richer. There's ample evidence that shows any kind of in-kind benefits, which are typically the sort of benefits that the federal government passes out with this tax money. It incentivizes poverty, it infantilizes the poor, it distorts markets, it creates bureaucratic waste because of the red tape involved, and it's not effective in reducing poverty. So we know already that taking money that's being used usefully by rich people to generate more wealth, which then spreads around naturally in for a variety of ways, because the process of generating wealth usually involves spending wealth as well. Because of those reasons, because of the actual impacts on the economy, it's a bad idea to raise taxes on anybody. We should lower taxes to as low as we can possibly lower them. We should get rid of the capital gains tax. We should promote actual growth in the economy. We should stop taking from Americans, from every average American, 1/3 of their total income via Social Security, which is insane. And guess who doesn't get that taken away? People who do taxes as independent corporations rather than as employees. Employees get that taken away. Corporate individuals don't have to pay that. Now, is that fair? No, it's not fair that anybody get that taken away, especially since it's not being used what it was promised for, right? It was promised to be a retirement plan, but you give money to the federal government, you give them power to take money from people, and they will take it and they will use it on something frivolous or something harmful most of the time. The unintended consequences of your apparently good idea of taxing the rich are, let's make everyone poor. It doesn't help.
Boom!
And wealth disparity in and of itself is not a problem.
I stole your line. Just think about it.
The thing is, if I've got 10 billionaires on the street and I'm a multimillionaire, I might feel poor in comparison. But we have to evaluate the actual standard of living. Are people's standards of living going, the most wealthy people going up? No. But is that relevant? No. So those are all things you have to think about. What do you think is the best way to type yourself? I've been wanting to know my personality for years. The test gives me different personalities every time I do it. Sorry for my bad English.
The best way to go about it is to pay Eric $100 and get a 70-minute, very in-depth session, 75. One-on-one. Oh, it's 75 now.
Oh, it's been that since I changed the price. It's a 75, which is an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a deal.
It is quite a deal.
Why are you lowering your prices?
I didn't lower them. I raised it to 100 from 60, but it originally was a long time ago. Okay. But I always gave at least 75 minutes anyway with the $60 price, so I just made it officially 75 minutes.
Oh, 75 minutes for $100.
Right.
Oh, I thought you said $75 for 115 minutes.
No.
Okay.
75 minutes for $100. That's an hour and 15 minutes for $100. So I agree with Kim. That's the best way to type yourself, but that's not the answer you want. It's difficult to know how to tell you to type yourself without knowing a lot about what you already know and what your perceptions are about it and where you might be going astray. If you find it that difficult to type yourself, there's a decent chance you're a FI type because they have a harder time typing themselves, either in the 1 or 2.
I'm sorry to overwhelm you. Just think about it.
Okay, so well, okay, I'm not disagreeing with you. Just think about it. This and that equal a set of this and that. Oh, when I'm drawing dichotomies, I'm drawing distinctions. That's what's being done there. So I'm not saying that you can't then undraw those distinctions. You can't go up instead of down. But my point is communication, understanding that's not FI language, that's TI language, where words have specific meanings. They're not attempts to express a person's meaning, but rather expressions of meaning in themselves. In that context, the only way to meaningfully do any work is to draw distinctions. We acknowledge that's what we're doing. We know going in drawing distinctions that it doesn't comprise all there is to do with language. But we also need to acknowledge that to get work done argumentationally or linguistically or communicatively, we need to be able to parse things according to distinctions. So that's why we draw those distinctions, not because they're absolute, not because they're representative of some physical fact of the world, so much as it is because they're a good way of understanding different manners in which people taxonomy things, or people approach things, or people value things. It's more a documentation of what's existent than it is a imposition of some taxonomy upon anything. Okay. So no taxation without representation. We aren't represented by these bureaucrats so they can shove their taxes right up their ass. Well, I agree with you. I don't like the taxes. We are represented, but I don't think the representation system works very well because there's a lot of people who want more taxes, such as Fate Wind. So is FITI, NISI, and TE particulars positions, and FENE and SE? No. The particularists are SE, SI, TE, and FI. The universalists are NE, NI, TI, and FE. We have taxes because people are okay with taxes. I agree with you on that sense. Benefits and welfare and taxing the rich significantly higher just sounds good, but we have taxes thanks to the government. Well, of course, that's who taxes us. Also, rich people tend to work their money. They don't hoard it, and it creates movement in the market, a win-win for all. They don't stuff it in their walls or in their pools. What causes them to stuff it places and sit on it are various tax laws that say, okay, well, I can't take these capital gains in this tax year. Shit like that. That happens all the time. People are making decisions to defer utilizing money in the economy because of tax decisions. Oh, it's normal. Yes. You believe more taxes on wealthy creates more poor people. Why that didn't show in history and in high tax developed countries today? Well, I mean, you're presuming against what alternative? So you're assuming that because a country is successful that has high taxes, that it would be less successful that had lower taxes. There's no reason to presume that. And I don't acknowledge that. Now, I will agree that in societies where you have extremely homogenous cultures and extremely smart use of tax dollars, you can provide something akin to socialism with people without taxing them extremely highly, although that's not usually the case. So if you look at like Norway's a well-run country, and it's got high taxes, and it's got a very socialist kind of system, and it's running effectively and well. It's capable of doing that in the short term because they've got a bunch of smart people who are managing the thing, and they're not letting people abuse it as much as normally they would. So am I saying it's impossible to make some sort of socialized system work, at least in the short term? No, it's not impossible, provided your culture's homogenous enough, nobody's taking advantage of shit, there's not an inclination towards fraud, there's very few people running it, and everybody's basically good and enlightened. Most places don't have that. And even if you do, it still is not saying that that's better than it would be in the alternative. I don't think it would be. I think those same virtues that allow them to somehow manage to get by with socialism and still be prosperous would make them extraordinarily prosperous were they to dispatch of socialism. So, I mean, yeah. Do you think the American dream is a real thing as far as if you work hard, you can get ahead, or do you think things are crap? No, I think it's a real thing. I think you can't, it's not enough just to work hard. I think you have to work hard and work smart and be smart. But absolutely, you can get ahead. Do you think that certain things can make sense in one person's set of cognitive functions, but not make sense to a person with a different set of cognitive functions, as in comprehension differs for individuals based on their stack? Sure. I think there's people who I will never convince about the taxes thing. It doesn't matter how much evidence I give, no matter how much reasoning I give, no matter how much argumentation I give, you're going to insist the fact that somebody has $1 billion is unfair. The fact that that person got that $1 billion by doing everything right to get $1 billion, that there's nothing stopping you from doing equivalent shit except your own lack of outstandingness, is not a reason to take that person's well-earned $1 billion from them. That disincentivizes wealth creation. It's important to have a definition of wealth and understand how wealth comes into the world and what it means to have wealth and stuff like that before you even begin to make arguments about this stuff. Most people don't have any such inclinations, any such definitions. Throughout history, poor nations had no or lower taxation. I mean, that's not true. It's just not true. There's not a correlation. What do you mean? I mean, first of all, even like if you're going to say poor nations, meaning what? Again, it's measured against absolute poverty, measured against relative poverty standards, which aren't measures of poverty. So what's your measurement metric? You once said, and I know the best music. Can you extrapolate on that for why? Well, I think because the best music is universally resonant, and NI knows what's universal and knows what's true and is going to play well. NIFE, NITE, I've noticed those people tend to prefer things that aren't necessarily NI resonant. So just because NI, quote unquote, knows that, what I mean by that is it'll recognize it as obvious or too uninventive if you're an NITE user, maybe. I think Norway works because it's small. It wouldn't work in the US. I don't think it works there. I think it doesn't fail utterly. Again, we have no comparison to compare against. We don't know how it would be if instead of taking 70% of the income or whatever they charge in Norway in taxes from every working Norwegian, they let them keep their money and do with it as they please. What would happen then? I mean, no matter what anybody thinks, there's no disputing that dollars that are redistributed by the government through any kind of government program incur at least a 25% waste in bureaucratic costs. So right there, you're chopping 25% of the power of the wealth out of the wealth by taking it and redistributing it in any way. So there's no disputing that. There's no disputing that when the government's giving in-kind benefits that says, if the government passes out free Frisbees, it's going to distort markets. All of a sudden, Frisbee manufacturers are going to have to charge less for their Frisbees. It's going to negatively impact the economy in that way. So there's a double trade-off there. You lose 25% from bureaucratic tape, plus you're going to lose growth in the economy commensurate with the amount of good you do with your tax dollars. So it's like double charging you, basically. It's just a terrible idea. There's no justification for it logically. There's no if you want to help poor people, you go give your money to poor people. Why should you say, government, you take my money so that you can give it to poor people, but also force everybody else to give you their money so you can give it to poor people? No, if you're so sure you want to give your money to poor people, you go give it to poor people. If you're so sure the government is a better decider about how to help poor people than you, then why don't you do a little work and research the matter and figure out a good way to help poor people? The American dream doesn't say you'll get ahead through hard work. It says you can work hard to get what you want. Why would an INTP rely on SI more than any, or is it just confirmation of recall bias on my part? INTPs might rely, well, I mean, SI is going to be their absolute value. NE is their instrumental value. So their NE is designed to serve their TI and their SI. And to the extent that it fails to do so, it's not inherently valuable in and of itself. SI, when they feel like they've accomplished things on an SI level, that is, they completed events that give them a sense of self-satisfaction they can put in their linear life narrative and so forth, then that's going to give them a lot of satisfaction. So just as FE has to validate everything for me, SIS to validate everything for an INTP. It's not just a tertiary, meaning it's somehow weaker than a tool. It also has a different value relationship, and in some sense, it's stronger in its value importance to the individual than is the instrumental, for sure, because the instrumental is just instrumental. Let me pause right now to do a little advertisement, which is about what Kim was talking about earlier, that I do type people for money. It costs $100. Email me at suartsire@gmail.com. That's Eric Strauss backwards @gmail.com. SSUARTSCIRE@gmail.com. And I'll give you Kim's PayPal address, PayPal or $100, and I'll make a schedule a meeting with you, and we'll do the typing within a day or two, hopefully, of when you PayPal her. So that is that. I'm putting it there.
It's so overwhelming.
Was it? I didn't think it was.
Just think about it. Thanks.
Oh, what was so overwhelming?
Sales pitch.
Really? Is that what you're responding to?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you live the dream through hard work. I love Death Note. That's an awesome show. The movie sucked, though. I'm the final ENTP. In what line? What type do you think would like atmospheric music, like instrumental music? People with bad taste in music? My Norwegian friend complains how expensive things are. Well, it would be expensive with all those taxes. Price of everything goes up. The real problem is that the price of money isn't free, i.e. the central banks are the problem. They distort the market of money itself, the root of the problem. Isn't free, as in the free market doesn't decide the price of money, aka the interest rate. Well, I will agree with you, Box Populated, that the way of getting money from the Federal Reserve into the economy is not appropriate, and there needs to be a different one, because the wealth that's generated when people do meaningful work doesn't come with debt, as does the money that is distributed into the economy. So ideally, we'd move away from government-backed fiat currencies that are distributed in this fashion to a more naturally occurring currency distribution methodology, such as that in cryptocurrency and or mining actual minerals like gold and silver and stuff like that. Because that is the way it has always been, Eric. Always have there been rainbows. Always have they sparkled. And forever have we twinkled and twirled through life. Well, sunbeaming, back to you. Buy gold, Vox Populi says. Yeah, I mean, cryptocurrency is not a bad idea either. I do plan to start the crypto USD when I'm president, and it doesn't necessarily even have to involve any sort of agreement from Congress, but it would help, because I plan to build into the architecture a direct treasury loop with a 4% tax built into it on the paying of crypto USD in any economic exchange, that would then go to the treasury and then loop right back into a UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is the only legitimate way to fund such a thing, is via a currency that everybody has equal access to mining. It's the only fair way to do it, and it's the only just way to do it. And anyway, it's a good idea, because if you got to have some good ideas if you want to be president.
Baby, are you an unhinged ENTP?
No, I'm a fully hinged one. Much love from Germany. Just me? Yeah, much love from America. I'll meet you in Stuttgart. We'll go watch Kraftwerk. What about the money that goes into infrastructure and other services? Well, I mean, I do think the government has some legitimate function. I'm not somebody who's an anarchist, nor am I a narco-capitalist. I believe in a constitutional citizen democracy that is appropriately constrained by the Constitution as it is written, rather than in these broad interpretations and stuff. Can you explain how TI works for me? It parses everything that I'm presented with in terms of making distinctions. Okay, well, let's define this as this and this is that, and draw distinctions here and here and here, and that's why this is right and that's wrong, or this is a good idea and this is a bad idea, or this makes sense and this doesn't. It is a bribe so poor people won't steal from you. What's a bribe so poor people won't steal from you? UBI or something? I've seen Kraftwerk. Lol. Yeah. We danced all night. We danced all night und sind wir went back to my flat and made love. Anarcho-capitalist? Well, that would be another kind of good currency. Just start, open up some cocaine mines and let people mine cocaine and sell it make that be the hard currency. Like it is in North Korea, they've got meth. I read this article that the hot New Year's gift in North Korea is meth.
What about in South Korea?
I don't think they're quite so enthusiastic about it there. You saw at Moog Fest in Asheville, North Carolina. Moog Fest. It's not pronounced Moog. It's Moog. Poor people steal off people who are only slightly better off than them. I do. Yeah, I speak in German all the time. I mostly speak English with a German accent, though. I don't really speak a lot of German. I might say, the Polizei are here, or I might say, das ist verboten.
Your mother always says, das ist gut.
I might say Oktoberfest, or Lederhosen, or I feel...
Say, das ist gut.
I feel, what's that word? That means Freudenfraud. I feel a lot of Freudenfraud right now because I'm German. What types or functions would like soundtrack music, epic inspirational music, Hans Zimmer, Two Steps from Hell? Yeah. INTJs or something? You like that? You like soundtrack music?
Yes.
Okay. SFJs maybe? I think SFJs depends on what they're... Well, I can't really like stuff that's like alternative-y. Yeah, but she also likes stuff that has clear emotional palettes. So each song will have a clear emotional palette. It won't be anything that's a great idea, Stephen Lewis. For what? For best YouTube channel? I should. That's great. That's a great idea. 64 channel MBTI YouTuber bracket and hold MBTI March Madness. Which means, well, I know what he means. He means pick 64 YouTube channels and go and compete them head to head against each other, eliminating one each time until you get down to the final four and then the final two and then pick the best.
That's some good NE.
That's NI. Yeah.
That's some good NI.
Yeah, it is. Oh, you could vote. Oh, now you want to vote, huh? Now you want to be a citizen democracy, huh, Stephen Lewis? A second ago, someone else was criticizing capitalism. Now you want to vote. Oh. How does TE logic differ from TI logic? Is TI logic better for debating? If so, why? The second question, yes, it's better for debating. The reason why is TE is an approach that says, I will come to understand the logic of this particular system so I can figure out the solvency to it. TE doesn't have its own logic. It doesn't have its own grammar to the logic. If you're trying to fix a doorknob, you figure out the logic of the doorknob. If you're trying to fix an engine, if you're trying to fix an engine, you try to figure out the logic of the engine that goes here because it's dug in too far by whoever put it in originally. And so this part that's supposed to hit this metal part and stop it from going, it doesn't go deep enough. So I need to raise the wood back out of there. That's understanding the logic of the doorknob, how it works, right? But that's what's necessary for that TE. Depending on what your
follow through is.
Depending, I mean, you can't. But the thing is, of course, I follow through a lot on that doorknob. I've worked on it a lot. It shows the limits of my TE. I need to return to it again. I replaced it with a different doorknob. It didn't fix the problem.
Like that? Why are you saying it like that? Do I need to add some money to that to get you to answer my question?
Okay, so why am I defending myself?
Well, if
you don't like
it, ask the question, you'd answer it.
I did answer it. You didn't like the way I answered it.
Okay.
I answered it in full, but he didn't like that answer.
Okay, fine.
So yeah, TE logic differs from TI logic because TE logic is not a logic. It's an approach to problems that figures out the logic of the thing in the particular instance. Now, they can use the TE DOM or TE tool user can certainly use TI and will understand when this instance requires one to use a TI approach. But they're never going to be as competent as somebody who uses a TI approach for everything with words. And they tend to view things in word as everything is a word problem. TI users tend to view, or at least TI NE users tend to view things as symbols, not the thing itself. So even when approaching a doorknob, I'll go, okay, well, here's what I know about a doorknob in advance, and here's some words about doorknobs. That's not going to fix the doorknob. God damn it. Let me see what's going on here with my client. Hello. Hi, Jeffrey. What's going on? I couldn't say that again. It was what? Why? What happened? You forgot to explain what? You forgot to explain what? Oh, you didn't extend it? Okay, well, so did you lose the round or what? Wait, so he denied what?
He denied two of my cards and my analogy.
What do you mean he denied them? On what grounds?
Literally, more than 7 when he responded directly, and I didn't read any evidence.
Okay, so that's going to happen in rounds where other people misrepresent what actually happened in the round. If you've got a good judge, they're not gonna buy it at all, and they may even vote against them because of it. That's very amateurish debating style to go. He dropped my second contention when you actually read a card on it or something. The judge isn't going to buy that. Now, in the future, you'll know when you do. I'm assuming you were neg, right? Yeah. Okay. So when you're neg, then in that last speech, tell the judge, anticipate this in the final speech. My opponent may tell you I dropped this. I don't let them tell you that. Spend the 5 seconds to say that. Okay? And make sure they respond to my warrants. Hammer what the warrants are they need to respond to. So look, if the guy is lying in his last speech about what happened in the round, then you have to hope it's a good judge. They're not going to vote for that shit.
Yeah.
Okay?
He conceded that he used my example of South Korea on. And then says that it's an example, one example of it working.
Okay. Did you remember what I told you about the example thing? You say, the problem is my opponent has not provided any more examples of authoritarian regimes that there are over 43 countries. There are 43 countries receiving military aid. If, in fact, I can show that my one example is an example where we need the flexibility that's afforded to decide on a case-by-case basis, then why should we assume his one or two examples counterweights mine completely? He doesn't exemplify it in any other examples than I do, any more examples than I do. Did you make that argument?
Huh?
Did you make it? I made defensively than in advance. I've told it to you like 5 times now. Make it in the round. Okay. Okay?
Okay, he'll be there in the
I'll see you tomorrow. I gotta go.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, so Jeffrey's a young ENTP who's got any run amok where he should be using more TI or more SI, and he's not using really either. He's used to flowing along in life with just his NE, and it's pissing me off because I tell him what to do in rounds, and he decides to do what he thinks in the moment. You know, it's annoying. Studies show that happiness level doesn't increase much after making $90,000 a year. would you be satisfied in life if you made between $500,000 and $5 million a year? Well, I'd be happier if I made $50 million a year or $5 billion a year, for sure. Now, that may be what the studies show, but I can guarantee you that wouldn't apply to me. I would do all kinds of crazy fun things if I had shit tons of money. I'd make ad campaigns on the freeway for jury nullification on billboards. I'd do all kinds of nuts stuff. I'd have all kinds of fun. I'd open Food Cube, my restaurant that just serves nutritious cubes of food for cheap. So I don't agree with it, Fate Wind, that I would be less satisfied. Would I be satisfied? I'm satisfied right now. I'm not going to be unsatisfied if I don't make all that money. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I'd be more happy if I had more money.
We could quit using the neighbor's Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That would make John Brooks happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could vote. I don't care, Stephen Lewis. I was just joking about the voting thing. I don't care.
Oh, that's a funny question.
But it would be.
Agatura, would you still do this though? Eric does this before he wipes his butt.
Yeah. Have you checked out the Eric the INTV channel? You ever type police? I've already done him. Yeah, I would spend a lot of money advertising this channel to get more people to watch it, you know. Which album do you prefer? Nevermind by Nirvana or 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang? I'm not familiar with 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang as an album. Nevermind by Nirvana is pretty good, but it's overrated somewhat, I think. Kim cameos are always a highlight. I agree. It's almost like Al and Peggy Bundy. It's an odd comparison, but okay. Yeah. I don't think I'm very Al Bundy-esque. Jeffrey is a baby.
I take that as a compliment. Yes.
Yes, Jeffrey's a baby ENTP.
However, I think that's kind of a backhanded compliment.
Jeffrey's not an ENFP. He's an ENTP. He's not very rigorous in his TI or SI or anything. Will you still do this? Yes, for sure. Expand on this Food Cube thing. Well, Food Cube is a miraculous concept in a restaurant. It's patterned after hot dog on a stick in that the girls have to wear colored dresses and short colored dresses in bright colors. And except they're cube dresses instead of regular dresses or whatever. And instead of a round hat, they have to wear a cube hat. And instead of hot dog on a stick, you get Food Cube, which is a cube of nutritious casserole that's rice, pork and beans, stewed tomatoes, and corn, and teriyaki and soy sauce, all first stir-fried and then baked into a casserole with cheese on top of it, called double cheese goodness. You cut one cube of double cheese goodness, which is a Food Cube, that's going to fill you up, and it's going to be nutritious. It's going to last a long time, and
be disgusting.
It'll be cheap
and disgusting.
Eric would have a decent production with $50 million a year, I imagine. Yeah, I would. I would have all that kind of stuff, right? For sure. I would love to be able to delegate most of that kind of stuff to somebody else. I'd love to have a staff full of people. Kimberly is useless as a staff. She doesn't do what I say, but she still does very useful things for me, which is what she feels like.
Well, I do all the things that nobody else would want to do for you, like feed you, wash your ass, wipe your ass, wash your clothes, clean your nose, wash your ears out, trim your ears, breastfeed you. Yeah, not forget that. And deal with your grumpiness.
It sounds like a nightmare. I was against Christianity and was locked in Mortal Kombat. That's why I lost the poo. Oh. I like it the first way it worked, Remius. That's why you lost the poo. Food Cube babes. Exactly. Tyrone Biggums, is that you again? You over here switching teams, lol? What's that? Soylent Green. I want to marry a Food Cube girl. After Kimberly dies, maybe I'll marry one too. Wait, you already typed that guy? Yes, I did. I don't know. Look for it. Search for Eric the INTP.
You know what? Why don't you and Eric already go do that? I'd love to watch it. I'd love to watch Eric pretend I've died and go after Food Cube girls.
Kimberly, I wouldn't go after him until you actually die. I'll probably be like 85 or something.
Freaking ridiculous.
At 85, I'll be like...
I can't wait to be in my grave laughing my ass off at you. Going after Food Cube girls and 19-year-olds when you're 85.
Now, listen. There's also a subsidiary of Food Cube called Food Cube Caliente, which is the same exact thing as Food Cube, but with a spicy Mexican flavor. So think about
You
that.
know, Eric, that when you're old and decrepit and richer than rich, all those little girls, they're not going after you, they're going after your money.
That's okay. That works for me. Could being financially well off make a conflict relationship work? If so, why? Possibly, but I don't think you'd want to have it anyway. Whatever. I planned this for to be one, really, to be honest, my last relationship. But if Kimberly were to suddenly die, then I would look for another ISFJ. I wouldn't bother messing around with any other type. What can I say at D Brown? I don't do cocaine. I just like how it smells. Yeah. Likewise. D Brown was talking to me. I'm CS's team. Oh, well. Congratulations. Have fun. Are you the cleanup hitter? Okay. I've caught up. That's nice. Got 28 people. Not bad for a Saturday night. If it's the second live stream of the day, I seem to notice that some of the quantity of people goes down a little bit.
Yeah, Sheila W., where the hell are you?
Right, Sheila,
she usually
come on.
comes in and then all of a sudden, boop, there's Brenda Lee. Almost like they're
Brenda Lee's right there.
What are you doing tonight? Brenda Lee says, ah!
I'm going on the live stream. Do you think duels work for everyone? No, not necessarily. I've seen plenty.
They don't work for us.
I've seen several INFP ESTJ relationships that don't work.
We don't either, Brenda Lee.
This is our life. What about semi-duels close enough? I think that's a good second choice. I think lots of people don't end up with their duels, but don't necessarily end up splitting up. There is such a thing as good enough. I think ENTPs are likely to end up in good enough.
I think it's interesting in life that a lot of people have ended up with their duels and they don't even realize it. They just look at it as though they're like really good at relationships.
You got a point there. Oh yeah, I am an absolute expert on relationships.
Absolutely,
we are a perfect couple. We're perfect. We really, we get along so well, and it's because we're both so good at relationships. We know so much. We're so wise. We can teach you about relationships. No, it's not. It's because you're fucking dual, lucky sons of bitches. I'm going to turn my creepers on
However,
Ultra.
that isn't the case for us.
Who's Ultra? No, Kimberly and I get along fine. It does take some time for us. You know, it's not instant.
You know what, though? Week 1, when you were reading about our compatibility, remember that one thing we never were able to find it again, but it said you will have
where we continually push pull
the roughest first 8 years of your life.
Well, I guess it basically said there'd be a continual push-pull as both parties. I think what it boils down to is both parties in an ENTP ISFJ relationship need some emotional triggering of some kind because it's both on the backside, but ISFJ understands it as necessary component of the FE in some way, and so there's a lot of back and forth, like taking turns feeling like things are unfair. It goes in cycles too. I think it has a lot to do with Kimberly's hormonal stage, but she might disagree with that. I think
that's just called female. I think that's just called being female, Eric.
Okay, fine then. ESFJ and ESTJ relationship, why wouldn't it work? It's not as horrible a possibility as it sounds at first. It's just that the 8th slot FE of ESTJ and the 8th slot TE of ESFJ, it's a function that you don't really seek a lot of help in normally, that you feel pretty comfortable doing yourself unconsciously. It's kind of like your unconscious tool function. That may run afoul of the dominant of the other one who's going to want to provide more of that than the other person wants. So in other words, if I keep offering you prunes and you absolutely hate prunes, then you're going to not be very happy with the gifts I give you all the time, right? I think that might be the problem with ESFJ, ESTJ. Obviously the ESFJ is seeking TI. They're not going to get a lot of it from ESTJ, who's ignoring, and by you defeat Eric and then defeats the more respectable ENTPs. So after I'm defeated by some third party, I guess, because obviously in the way you phrased this, not you who does it. Otherwise, you wouldn't use passive voice. So I'm defeated by some third party, and then that person defeats the more respectable ENTPs, and then only then do I face you. So I face you after I'm defeated already? So you're going to wait 35 years to face me? That's odd. Vox INFP is a good match with ISTJ and INTJ. Only two types that can last for long term, I think. They may work with ESTJ, but only if they grow up together. I think ISTJ is a very good choice for INFP because ISTJ is much more earnest in their FI in some regard. And I think INFP needs that.
So I donated to PayPal today $78. So I have a question, and I hope that it can be answered.
Uh-huh.
What is the possible worst two types that could be together?
Oh, I didn't know you donated via PayPal, Kimberly. It's odd if you would do so. The worst two types to be together.
Well, our bank account. I contributed to our bank account $78 today, and I hope that gives my question priority.
Okay, it does. You could just point out that you're sleeping with me. That would also be the priority. The worst two types to be together are any type and John Brooks.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's the correct answer. I think for anybody, no matter what woman you're talking about, an extended period of time with John Brooks would drive you to the crazy house.
Isn't John Brooks that guy that you were seeing last night as a kind of a douche?
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry, John Brooks. Are you there? My bad.
Oops. I thought that was last night.
Do you agree NI make conclusions and TI make correct possible errors? Yeah, I agree with that. That NI produces things that are already concluded, that are known and don't need deliberation. TI can then apply deliberation to some NI truths. Some NI truths are reducible by a TI deliberation and some are not. So, in general, I would say well, John, what about Brenna Lee? I thought you came for her. Guess how many tabs I have open right now? 35, says Brenda Dean. What do you personally think of INTPs, Eric? My father's an ENTP, so it'd be really great to hear an unbiased opinion for once. I mean, I've always liked them. We always get along well. We're quadrumates. We're in the same, I forget what Socionics calls it. Not just the same quadra, but we're in the same group of people who find the same things interesting. I forget what it's called.
Okay, but are your tenders moist
For INTPs?
for INTPs?
They're pretty moist. I mean, INTPs and ENTPs don't have very moist conversations. We tend to talk about ideas. It tends to be pretty interesting. We talk the same way. INTP will ask more questions and will challenge ENTP. ENTP will pontificate a bit, and then INTP will give their critique, and there's general mutual respect between the two types. It's easy to talk to them. We get along well as friends. It's not a good pair for lovers because there's not any moisture there.
Thank God, because he's talking about his father. Or her father.
Well, I'm just giving you an overview of everything, you know. Brenna Lee is a lesbian. I'm a lesbian! Well, John Brooks. So I guess you're not after Brenna Lee anymore. Well, John Brooks still wants you involved, Brenna Lee. Download the app Telegram and look for Steno Morina, and I'll invite you. And then knock 3 times. And then, if you know the password, I'll let you in. Because it's really, really super secret. You don't see the vid on INTP Eric? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I know I've done him before. He's an INTP. I confirmed his INTP-ishness. Are you positive you did the vid? Yes. FML. And then flat face guy. Lol. I know what FML means. Oh, fuck my life? Is that what it means?
Oh, John Brooks is a cyber stud.
Well, if that is adequate satisfaction for your lack of
I'm actually starting to like him now.
IRL studliness, then that's good. Y'all cowards don't even smoke crack. I don't smoke crack. That's true. I wouldn't say that's cowardice necessarily. I would say it's probably wisdom and or just not really liking crack very much. I'm not a huge crack fan per se.
He's not a butt crack or crack fan.
Yeah. True. Strong arm, just me says. Okay, well, good job, strong arm, just me. True. Hey, Hambone found something. What does it say? Nobody knows.
Hambone!
Yeah, crack is overrated. Meth is where it's at. Well, you keep doing your meth there, John. Do that meth. And it'll give you lots of energy for attending these live streams and saying your wonderfully insightful and helpful comments.
And then be a total penis hole to the rest of everyone in your life. And deny it.
They call meth crack here. Only heroes smoke crack. Only crack smokers are heroes. And that's all that. If you want to be heroic, find your local crack dealer and say, "Good sir or madam, may I purchase some crack cocaine from you?" What type do you believe G. Gordon Ramsay and Dr. Phil are? G. Gordon Ramsay, I don't know. Dr. Phil, I think, is probably an INFJ. He might be an ISFJ, but I've heard him say a lot of NI sounding things, such as, until you accept the truth.
I think he's very scripted, though.
Well, sure, he is scripted, but he's scripted as his character, kind of. You know, it's not like he's scripted in someone else's voice, in someone else's manner, and someone else's.
You're right. It's his production. He does it his way.
And I also don't think he's as scripted as you might think. He's at least somewhat on the fly. He's practiced in what he does. But I've heard him say things many times like, "You will never begin to heal until you know the truth. You got to accept the truth." That's very NI, but he doesn't seem like an extrovert to me. So I'm thinking INFJ. But
Kimberly is a very big fan.
Yeah, and I've seen a fair amount of Dr. Phil because Kimberly's a big fan. I'm a fan too. I like him. I think he's pretty good.
Would I dare never, ever to take Eric on one of his shows, though? Oh my God. Believe me, though, I've been tempted.
Hi, Dr. Phil. What about Jerry Springer? I don't know about Jerry Springer.
Jerry Springer just made a shit ton of money making crazy ass shit, and that's scripted shit.
I mean, Jerry Springer is more likely to be an ENFJ or something, I think, because he doesn't care what kind of attention he gets. It's just as long as he gets attention. A penis hole never caught on as an insult. Guess it's not NI. Well, you could go with Kimberly's insult this morning to me, which was dick hole pincher. I woke up to that insult first thing in the morning.
I don't know why I even said it.
I was just, fiddling with my junk in bed and stop that, you dickhole pincher. I just started laughing. Dickhole pincher? What? You threw hands with Dr. Phil in a Walmart in Louisiana and lost. Sounds about right. He's a badass motherfucker.
What does throw hands mean?
Three cubic meters. That's huge, John. You're a giant cube of penis flesh. What does inferior TE look like? What about grip of inferior TE? Okay, inferior TE looks like telling your significant other what's really important to you and hoping they just make it happen. Not really asking them to do it because that involves like FE. Just, oh, I really wish I had my cake and could eat it too. And then in the at least theory of duality, you get your ESTJ go, well, don't worry about it, honey. I'll make sure you have your cake and eat it too because I don't care. You're spoiled as long as you love me because I'm FI seeking.
That's what you told me in the very beginning of our relationship.
Neither of us are FI types, Kim.
But you told me in the beginning of our relationship I can be as bratty and needy and
I told you could be as needy as you want, but not as controlling as you want.
You said I could be bratty and that you thought it was adorable.
Well, I do when it's not controlling.
You didn't give me a description exactly. You just said bratty.
Well, you should have asked for definitions in the cross-X period, Kimberly.
Well, you already signed on the dotted line.
Okay, well, so I guess you're stuck with me. Too bad for you. It can't be that miserable. Can you believe this shit I gotta put up with? Jerry has a nice car collection. Okay.
So does Eric.
I do not have a nice car collection.
Yes, you do. They're all broken down.
Oh, you. Theoretically, shouldn't want to be with someone with your polar function, but if you're polar to E, couldn't there be an advantage to someone being able to use that so long as intellectually one isn't? Well, that's the idea of duality. Kimberly's polar to E, I'm 6th slot to E. It's strong but countervalued. So I can utilize it to assist her. I am FI polar, so I don't really know what I want to do anyway. So she can sort of point me at this and that. I mean, I'm pretty good with my FI compared to a lot of ENTPs probably at this point. For example, I know I want to be doing this. I know I resent it when Kimberly interferes with me YouTubing. So in that regard, that's an FI thing. And but regardless, my TE gets applied to a lot of problems that Kimberly has, including tonight. I told her I'd put together this table, get it down from above the basement, and screw the legs on and stuff. So that's an example of my 6th slot TE. I don't really care about TE. I don't like being called upon to do things that are hard to figure out or tech shit where you lost the password and you gotta. I hate that shit. But for Kimberly, I'm more willing to do it, and it makes her happy. I will end up doing a fair amount of it just to make her happy and feel good about that. Just me, you are playing to my my biggest weaknesses there when you say that. I will play something on the guitar before we leave here, but I'll wait till the end. What is Kimberly's zodiac sign?
Leo.
She's in August. What attracted you to Kimberly at her at the beginning and your first impressions of each other? Well, what attracted me to her was I wasn't really sure. I just found myself thinking about her a lot. I also found that I liked her house. I liked her SFJ-ishness. I liked her I was immediately comfortable with her. There wasn't a lot of, it turned out there was a lot of figuring each other out. But at first it seemed like a very intuitive pairing. It wasn't too long before, just a few, maybe a week or something before we were just rolling in laughter at joking around and stuff and having a great time together. And it just seemed like
it was a rough beginning.
I mean, it was a mix of good and bad things at the beginning. There were moments when I felt clearly like, oh my God, it's like being reunited with my best friend from childhood. It's like having a best friend in childhood again, where you're just experiencing this kind of like raw, pure joy at times. But then other times there was a lot of conflict. I think it was because we both came in with certain expectations that weren't met. We both had to learn that I'll look for it. We both had to learn that these expectations, some of them we didn't really need to have fulfilled. I came in with lots of expectations about how she should talk to me and what she should say and how she should coddle my ego in certain ways and stuff like that. it turned out I didn't really need any of that stuff. I thought for sure I did need it, but I actually didn't. So what did that turn out to mean? Well, basically it means that like when you're with your dual, you learn a lot. Like my take on it was I had a lot of expectations and heuristics that I used as ways to compensate for the fact that I wasn't with a dual. So, but it's something I don't need to do. And those bad habits caused a lot of harm in both directions, from her bad habits and mine both. So let me see. Type police INTP. Let me try that first and come up with it.
My attraction to Eric was I didn't like him at all, but I was attracted to him physically.
You didn't like me at all?
No, you were a butthole.
I wasn't. Just I was over. This is the thing though, Kim. If I was really pleasant for a whole night and then
You weren't pleasant for a whole night.
Listen to me. If I was pleasant for a whole night and then one little bit of it I'm unpleasant, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person or a butthole. It means that one part of it didn't go well.
Right, but my opinion at the end of the night was that was it. It's over.
Oh, maybe I didn't do Eric the INTP. Maybe I did Joshua the INTP. I could have sworn I did though. Let me check again. I don't see it either. Maybe I didn't do that person. I could have sworn I did, but I guess I didn't. I guess I'll have to do them. All right, so I'm behind. I've got plenty of comments to comment upon. Okay, so I mean, what were your first impressions before I pissed you off that night, Kim? You always want to focus on what I did wrong. Why don't you focus on what went well? Okay, my bad. Go.
I don't know why, but that's what I did. So do you want to know?
Okay.
Or do you want to know the truth, or do you want me to?
Well, I'm asking you to tell me the truth about your impressions before I made you mad. The first impressions.
Well, the first impressions were that you're extremely nice, and you were such a gentleman, and I loved that you picked a really nice restaurant, and I loved that everything that you did. But per usual, everybody's on their best behavior the first 30 minutes. So what I'm saying is I judged the package on the whole, and you failed.
But obviously I didn't.
Well, that
we've
night
been together
did.
Almost 2 years.
My point is that night you failed.
Okay, I mean, I agree that night I made a mistake, but ultimately I succeeded because
Yes,
I
you did.
apologized for it and
Yes.
took accountability for it, which is the
Yes.
thing that neutralizes things so you don't get criticized for them forever. You see how that works?
Yeah, baby. Well, I did say, yes, I will marry you with my 2-carat diamond on. That was terrible.
How does TI manifest? You ever try to fly and move stuff with your mom when you were a kid? Probably on a few occasions. But I had other attempts at other kinds of magic that I was doing for a while until I was about 12 or something like that. How does TI? And then I decided it wasn't working. How does TI manifest in ISTPs versus INTPs? I often hear ISTPs described as being good with their hands or whatever. Isn't that TE shit though, as you might say? Yeah, TI determines what's the best course to take for ISTPs. Here's an example of the difference between an ISTP and an ISTJ. An ISTP will perhaps get in the car, be driving with his woman, and as I had a conversation with Kimberly the other day in the car, go, where should we get off to go to this place? I say this street. She goes, no, that's too far. Get off on this street first. And instead, and then I go, well, that street's too close to us. It's further from the street we're going to than the street I want to get off on. And she says, no, because if you get off on the street, if you get off on your street, it takes you too far south or too far north. And if you get off on the street I'm talking about, then it's almost the same height north-south. So it's a smarter way to go. So that convinced me. That's a TI reason to convince me, okay? We're not looking at the map, right? We're not using Google Maps to get there on the phone. I'm just asking Kim what she thinks.
Away.
Yeah, it's not very far away. And I'm just asking Kim which of a couple of possible routes she thinks is best. And we use TI to determine which is the best route to go. Now, that's what an ISTP will do. Now, once that decision has been made, the ISTP will then follow through on that decision. So in this story, I was going to go then, once I made the TI decision, we were going to go do that. I decided, okay, we're going to go do that. But then when I got to the freeway, there was like a 4-car line to get onto the freeway. It didn't change the reality at all, this little 4-car line to get onto the freeway. It still was the best way to go, but I didn't like the fact that there was a 4-car line there. So I said, well, you know what, maybe I'm going to go this way instead, because I'm an NE DOM and I'm not following through with SE on my TI decision making. So the difference between an ISTP and an ENTP, for example, would be the ISTP follows through on the TI decision. The difference between ISTP and ISTJ is the ISTJ doesn't ask the other person what the best way to get there is. He's looked it up ahead of time, or he's looked it up on his phone, or does some other TE solution to the problem where he solves it himself. It's because I'm FE that I asked Kimberly, what do you think the best way is, or suggested a thing, and then she countered with something else. So that's as good an explanation I can give as the STP versus NTP. An INTP will be more like an ENTP, which is to say they'll determine the best course of action maybe, but then they don't necessarily follow through on it. And they're even less likely to follow through on it because they're SE polar, not SE eighth. Remember, SE eighth means SE serves my ideation, which is why when I decided to ideationally take a different route, my doing served that, right? I just went ahead and did with what my whim said at the moment, which was, no, I don't want to wait in that 4-car line. So that's doing, satisfying my ideational whim. At the moment, I've got a new idea. Now, instead, I'll take foothill instead of taking the freeway. If I were an S instead of an N, then it would be the other way around. My action is going to be there to serve my my nature. It's instrumental to my nature. Once I conclude the logical way to go, I go that way. It becomes NI in the third slot at that point. I've determined the best way to go. And I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to stick with that plan and see it through to fruition to accomplish the NI satisfaction of the whole of having and completing the best way. So one good way to understand ISTP is the type that follows through logically to get shit done, but get that shit finished. Now, ISTJ, on the other hand, exercises the craft repetitively to execute it ever better and better and get closer and closer to perfection in that craft. And INTP ideates like ENTP, but is more aware or attentive to the deliberative aspects of it. That is, say, they're more hesitant to come to ideational conclusions, to put their ideas out there, or to even voice some of their things because they're FE, very cautious, and they're introverts. Doing things with your hands is SE shit. Well, it can be. I think it probably is. It could be SITE shit, though. ISTJs are very do shit with your hands oriented. So I couldn't find that video either. Maybe I'll have to make that. I'm only like that when I'm drunk. When I'm sober, I'm a real pain in the ass. I had to learn to accept myself this way. I'm an ISFP. You're only like what when you're drunk? Pleasant? Good with the hands is probably related to ISTP's SE relationship. Good with the hands is related to the SE-NI for sure. The NI says, okay, make sure you have the best approach to this first. TI tries to parse out what the best approach is with conditional logic, which isn't necessarily the most TE angle, but is going to give them clarity that allows them to move forward. They're not so concerned about getting every speck of it right and exactly as they are about moving forward towards the total goal and completing sections of it and stuff. But they want the path to be right. What about sidereal versus tropical zodiac? In my experience, the tropical zodiac doesn't work. That said, perhaps sidereal doesn't either. But so far, sidereal seems to work in my real world experience. I don't know anything about zodiac signs. I don't think Kimberly does either. Do you, Kim?
No.
Well, being good with your hands, which I sense to mean being mechanically and kinesthetically inclined. Where was it? Well, it's way back up there. ISTJs and ESTJs, I would argue, the most mechanically inclined along with ISTPs. I agree. You should type please Anthony Fantano, the music reviewer. He says it's ENFJ. Okay, thank you for the suggestion. Anthony Fantano, huh? I'll have to remember that. I can look in this video later and see. Tropical is Western. Okay, well, I don't know anything about zodiac signs. Hambone, quit touching your meat. It'll marinate itself.
That's what Eric thinks.
Just me. This is gold. Haha at Hambone. Thanks for checking, Eric. You're welcome. Sorry I was wrong about that. Failing forward is the way to success. Great job, Eric. Thank you for that, I think. Well, ESTJ has high SE, right? With TI, I believe. So same as, well, ESTJ has a 6 slot SE. It's actually countervalued. They've got SI in the second slot. So, and no, ESTJ is TESI, NE, FI. So that's different. ISTP is TISE, NI, FE. Totally different. They don't share any functions. As I tend to hold grudges while NI can have unrealistic expectations. Agree? Yes. What brand of cigarettes are you smoking? The only brand of cigarettes we're smoking. Real American Marlboro Reds. They make things that look the same like this in other countries. It's not the same cigarette. Don't believe it. You got to get American-made Marlboro Reds. If you're traveling overseas, buy yourself 10 cartons of them before you go, because the Marlboro Reds overseas, wherever it is you are, doesn't matter if it's England, France, Russia, wherever, they're not the same. So I just let you know that, everybody. ESTJ, ESTP, ISTP, ISTJ has high SE. No, ESTJ is SE6. They're TE, SI, NE, FI. ESTP has SE 5th. They're SE, TI, FE, NI. ISTP has TE 5th. ESP 6th. No, I'm sorry, SE. ISTP has SE high. ESTP has SE high. But ESTJ does not, and ISTJ does not. ISTJ has it in 5th, and ESTJ has it in 6th. So an INFJ that has come to terms conceptually with TE couldn't put up and benefit romantically from an INTJ. I don't think it would go well because the tool function doesn't work on each other, is the problem. The INFJ would use the FE to try to deal with the INTJ, and the INTJ, it would just fall on deaf ears all the time, and it wouldn't have the expected impact. And they'd constantly be criticizing the other person on their failure to use their tool function. ESTJ and ISTJ have ISI, yes, and high TE. So ESTJ, ISTJ are SITE. INTJ, ENTJ are NITE. INTJs are good at knowing what they want. I think they probably are. INTJs aren't necessarily good at expressing it. INTJs and INFJs have the same goals. Well, they have the same implicit frame, which is to say they're going to engage with things that allow them to utilize the truth or distillation into a singular path. And if some event or situation doesn't allow that, then it's going to run afoul of their willingness to be there, interest in being there. However, their instrumental value is going to be different for both of them, and it's going to often run afoul of each other. Namely, one wants to socially interface, the other wants to systems interface. And their third slot functions, which provide their absolute value for themselves, are also going to conflict a lot of times, because for the INFJ, it's TI, they want logical consistency, and for the INFJ, it's FI, they want personal interest consistency. And in interested calculus and disinterested calculi, the interested and disinterested calculi conflict with each other much of the time. Vox Populi. Let me I skipped somebody. How does SI help creativity in the different function stacks? SI is one of two launching points for any. If you ever watched that movie, The Usual Suspects, at the end of it, there's a scene where Kaiser Soze tells this story. And it's the whole movie is Kaiser Soze telling this story. And then at the end of it, the detective who's done this interview realizes that he was just making shit up based on stuff he saw in the room around him. And that's SENI. SE serving, SENE. SE is serving NE, is giving you the nubs of things to work off of. That's a perfect example of it. SINE fills in a lot of those gaps. So you'll have a freely associative notion of when you see a coffee cup on the shelf, it'll remind you of a coffee cup you got when you were on vacation in Mammoth as a kid, and it'll link to Mammoth. Even though the coffee cup says the Cubs on it or something. It doesn't matter because the coffee cup has some shape in it that causes this random associative link. So that's where NE gets its divergence and its novelty is through these disparate links like that, these random particularist associations that it then positions in a universalist context to make it resonant in some way and also novel. And that's basically the mechanism of NE TI or potentially NEFI as well. I think I kind of got off topic in the answer there, but hopefully that explains it. What is their goal, Mad Biscuit? Is it to make more biscuits? Hambone, are you approaching age 50? If that's the case, then I heard Genghis Khan has some techniques, but I don't know for sure. I'm approaching age 50. Universal truth is the goal. I don't know, just guessing. It's the goal for whom and what context. That's my goal in general. I want my extroverted objects to attain that goal. I'd like pieces of media to be resonant with people as universally as possible. But in the beginning, they believe, well, this person understands me, so I just have to get them to change their method of attacking this goal we share. Right, because they have the same implicit frame, but they justify each other on each other's NE on some level as well. And both types are pretty good at it. It's ignoring, but they're looking to see the other individual in the relationship being ideationally at least capable. They don't have to be necessarily better than that, but they have to be at least capable. Both types are capable, so they're going to validate on that external metric of the fifth slot NE just fine. So at the beginning, it's going to seem better than it is. It's a figurative penis. Oh, yeah, not the literal penis. Oh, no, just metaphorical in nature and in shaft as well as the head. It has alofted itself in the air, but figuratively. Soon in the relationship, both the INFJ and INTJ realize they cannot change each other's methods. It will increasingly become worse and worse over time. I agree with that. I am not an Aries or Capricorn, moon, dawn. Lol, dysfunction of the erectilia. Lol, hambone. Is that name a digital representation of your penis? Don't relate it to sidereal one bit. Okay. This is with all types that have opposite tool functions, but everything else is the same. Nobody has opposite tool functions, but everything else is the same. If you have opposite tool functions and you also have opposite polars and you have opposite thirds and you have opposite sixths. Sixths is a difficult word to say. What if there are no functions and types and we're all drunk with lust for pseudo-intellectual knowledge and seemingly plausible and semi-convincing misperceptions? Well, Matthew Alistair, that's why we have to be careful with our NI running amok. It's fair to say if you limit what you're doing in terms of a certain frame, that is to say, I'm conceptualizing about the way that people cognate and interact with one another and go about life and the world. And the reason I'm doing so is so that I can recognize instances of being as examples of a set rather than unique and unknowable explosions of selves unrelated to other such explosions of self. So it's really more, it's incredibly implausible that we wouldn't parse the human experience in some sense and try to understand it better and use that understanding. To the extent that intuitives may become overly fixated on those meanings, well, that's actually a thing that happens plenty. And it's true that the risk of the intuitive is to neglect the actual, the physical or particular or unique experience of being a specific person. They will neglect that in favor of meaning-based realities that, if they neglect the former too much, can ultimately seem hollow. But by the same token, sensors run the risk of being too actuality focused and forsaking any of the depth and nuance of being by neglecting meaning too much. I mean, I don't want to be somebody who's, I don't want to be Ben Basserland, who's so immersed in function mechanics that I can explain every last detail of socionics and that's my life's work or something. And I also don't want to be Joe Sixpack, comes home from his job every night, gets drunk in front of the TV, and has no metaphysical reflection. I don't think either of those things are ideals, at least not for me. Maybe for those people they are, but they're not for me. I want to have something more balanced than that. I'd like to have both an abstract understanding of the world and opportunities of real existence to apply it in. I live a pretty regular life, you know. I mean, most of my time that I'm not doing this, I'm doing stuff like fixing stuff around the house or running errands or, you know, dealing with some fight, dealing with a crying daughter. Sometimes she'll come home and she's upset about something that happened or she got yelled at work or something. You know, that kind of stuff, regular life stuff. So in that regard, I try to stay balanced. I try not to be too metaphysical, but it's a legitimate question and it's a good one. And it's certainly plausible that we can overdo it with the meaning-based stuff. I think that's what happens when people get all really into conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And then we are all high on, I think this guy is basically saying what I said, he said it before me. Let's see. Jesus, I'm so far behind. Then we are all high on different pseudo drug knowledge that give us different stuff to study or different reactions. YP. I don't know what YP is. Matthew, then it's a good orgy, isn't it? Yeah, right. Just shove it in my ass and quit complaining, Matthew. Jared, INFJ and INTJ goals are framed through NI. So NI goals. Is sex more SI or SE? Sex depends on what type you are, but getting it is more SE. But having it, like you're in a relationship, how you have it and what your experience of it is going to depend on your type. For me, it's not very SI or SE. It's very intuition based and meaning based and stuff. And Kimberly's very SI about it. So there's some compatibility issues there. I want to play, now you be the whatever and I'll be the whatever. And she's like, how about we be human beings kissing and in love with each other? And I'm like, that's not sex. That's just like, what are you talking about? You know, real feelings? What? Who has sex like that? I'm supposed to spank you and call you a slut and stuff, you know? What do you mean you don't like that? Well, it's taking some adjusting, you know. I think my father could be ISTJ, but he doesn't seem to refer to the past a lot. That is normal for ISTJs to refer to the past a lot. You have to ask him questions that give him the opportunity to either refer to the past or talk generally and see how he responds to it. I don't know about typing, I don't know about sex, to be clear, awkward. So you do know about sex, but you don't know about typing. Can you type a person's sex? In other words, can you tell if they're male or female? Or is that impossible for you? Well, Jared, they are both NI-DOMs. So can an INFP have been a sports person while growing up? That's SE, right? Sure, an INFP could be a sports person growing up. In fact, they can be quite a good sports person growing up. Even though they've got SE polar, it's more to sports than just SE. There's a certain amount of intense effort that comes into play and some other shit as well. What? Well, that's good. Really? You're 3-0? That's great. Great. Exclamation point. See you tomorrow. So that's good. My kid who thought he had maybe lost 2 of his 3 rounds, or maybe, 3 of the rounds, he won them all. It goes to show you kids don't know anything when they come out of rounds. They come, oh, I made this mistake. I think I lost. And, He's good. He went 3-0 today, which means he has a good chance of making out rounds. It's kind of bad because it's power match. He's gonna have to go up against somebody else who's 3-0 tomorrow. First round tomorrow. Now I really got to go there tomorrow morning. Yeah, I know they are both. And I thought you were talking about something different. Sure. Just because SE isn't in your top 4 doesn't mean you don't have it or don't have it in a decent placement. Correct. And I could be reasonably effective at playground basketball. I wasn't really ever good enough to play on like a team or anything. I'm 6'4" though. I'm pretty tall, but I just got no hops. I can jump over a grasshopper, and that's about it. It's because cigarettes overseas have tar and nicotine limits. Oh, really? And plus, these Marlboro Reds, American Marlboro Reds, have got some sort of special chemical bite to them that no other cigarette has. It's like some mix of chlorine and death smoke or something that gives it an extra, yeah. It really is satisfying. Yeah, your 5th function is effective. Your 6th function is potentially effective, but you don't underestimate the power of countervaluing something. You don't. I find it almost impossible to really understand TE. What really can be effective for me in 6th slot is something akin to a workaround TE almost, where I do TE well on a metaphysical level, like making lesson plans is an example of good TE on a metaphysical level. I'm pretty good at that kind, but that's when it starts to blend with TI almost. When 2 SI-FI users are fucking, are they using SE, for example, 2 INFPs? Not necessarily. I mean, what are they attending to? What's going on in their head? If you're having sex and what's going on in your head is looking at the boobs and going boobs, then that's SE. And if your eyes are closed and you're imagining that your lover is actually a sheep dressed up like a vampire because you're a freak or something, then you're using any, So it really depends on how you experience it. If you're just sitting there feeling the feeling on your body and enjoying that feeling, then that's SI. If you're thinking about how it's unfair that you went down on her but she didn't go down on you, then that's TI. On the cognitive functions, I get any and NI. It's high above all other functions. If you're thinking like, I wish I had a clipboard and could give her a bunch of instructions and check her off and if she follows them well enough and stuff, that's TE. I get off on that a little bit myself. Oh, TE. What type do you think you are, Jared Chan? Have you hypothesized yet? Here. Brenda Lee, I'm ENFP, says Jared Chan in Brenda Lee's voice.
Here.
Thanks. I really need this. That's very helpful.
Well, I was bringing you that, and I figured do it.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. I disagree. I think the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was the saw lady in half trick. I don't know if you've ever seen the devil do it. It is very convincing that he sawed the lady in half. When it turns out to be two ladies, even though you think you know how the trick is done, you're shocked every time. It's incredibly impressive. You got to see his show. Let's see. How was your SI ranked? I ranked number 1 in SI, number 1 in NE, number 1 in SE, number 1 in NI, number 1 in FE, TE, and number 2 in FI. I'm CS Joseph. I can't remember. It was very low, but SE was super low. We try hard to be in the moment. We will remember everything in our detail, so our SI definitely logs it. It's from The Usual Suspects, lol. Oh, that thing I was talking about? Yeah. Kaiser Soze. Who went behind? NENIFI sounds like ENFP. I've heard it before, but I have no idea what The Usual Suspects is. It's a film in which the basically the main character is an ENFP, probably, who ideates out this whole story at the end to get himself away. Even though he's actually the mastermind of the criminal organization, he pretends to be an underling and tells a story about this mastermind that's so like scary and shocking and everything. And then after he's let go, then the police detective realizes that he had made the whole thing up, and it's interesting. It's very much NE based. I know the functions aren't exactly the same, and the tool functions are not the same. I'm just not trying to write too much. Yeah, I figured you probably knew that, but I thought I'd be pedantic. Congratulations, you've got one serving of Eric's pedantry. I'm sure it was not very pleasant to taste. Something I'm working on. I'm trying to be a little less pedantic. I mean, tropical Gemini with that stuff. Aquarius moon in astrology. I'm an Aquarius moon, and it is similar to NI. I'm a Barbarius moon. What's that mean? Love Kevin Spacey. I'll have to watch. Hey, Brenda, Dean, I bet if you ask nicely, Kevin Spacey will sexually assault you. I hear he's into that. I'm an Aquarius. I don't know what that means, though. I don't know what that stuff means either. I'm a Taurus, whatever that means. ENTPs are great parents. I like to think I'm a great parent. Delilah thinks I'm a great parent. She might make some jokes or comments here and there, but can you close that door, Kim?
It's closed.
No, you left it open. For sure, I can feel the difference when it's open. Eric, what are your thoughts on astrology? I don't buy it at all. I think it's silly, but that's just me. I don't judge people who are into it. Oh, never mind. I know I am a mermaid. RT, you are a mermaid. You
Eric's
are a most
astrological sign is Uranus.
You're a most delightful mermaid. Okay. Aquarius moon is for FI or NI. Sun is TI. Well, what's my moon? I want the regular moon. What's regular moon? Do you have Earth moon? Anybody Earth's moon? Why do you have a crying daughter when she's FI polar? Same reason I have a crying self when I'm FI polar. FI polar doesn't mean you don't experience emotions. It just means they don't impact your calculus. So Delilah and I will cry at each other and have TI-based arguments at the same time.
But I don't agree that Delilah is an ENTP. I believe that she cries for other reasons, and Eric doesn't see that.
I didn't say anything about what reason she cried for.
I know, but I just think that she's more emotional about different types of things than you. I don't know if that's a type thing or not.
A lot of people want to fight me on Delilah's type. The problem that anybody's going to have with questioning Delilah's type is she's indisputably natural and intuitive with CI problems. She took a logic class, finished at the very top of it, was the star of the class, always thought they were going too slow. And takes the TI like a fish in water. There's no doubt the TI is her tool function. And it's definitely not her dominant function because she's definitely an extrovert. So there's that, right? You're not going to be able to convince me that TI is not high on her stack because of her just basic fluency with all kinds of logic problems and her enthusiasm for them too. She likes that kind of work. And she's just not very TE. She doesn't do things efficiently at all. She's not. Her room's a complete mess. It's like a disaster, right? And her SI is obviously bad. It's fourth or fifth slot. She could be an ESTP, but she's not. She's not anything but an ENTP or an ESTP. But a lot of people disagree. They'll try to say she's an ESFP or an ENFP. They can say that, but then that's just because they're not testing TI.
What does the SI bring to the table?
SI brings things like, well, you would never live in a room like Delilah's room, right?
Right.
You would never tolerate the car getting as bad as Delilah's car.
Right.
That's because you have SI higher up. You care a lot about your nest and your space and your body and keeping clean and maintaining a comfortable space around you. And Delilah, who's either SI ignoring or SI seeking, like me, can be very messy because she's either ignoring SI or seeking somebody else to do that for her.
Okay. So it's more of the
you want to think about it?
Less tolerance.
Less tolerance for what?
For situations. You have more tolerance than her. And she does.
Yeah, well, she's younger. She's a lot younger than I am. I mean, I've grown over time to become less self-centered or less selfish.
Were you as go-y as she was when you were younger?
I was very go-y. I don't think I was ever quite as go-y as she was. It was just one reason I'd buy ESTP. So I'm not sure though. I'd like somebody else to type her ultimately, but I haven't made that happen yet. My video was out for like 20 minutes or something. I thought it was out for everyone else. Then I just realized, wait, maybe you should refresh. I was talking like we were all waiting. I don't know what that means.
It means she was disconnected and thought everybody was.
Okay. Who has sex with themselves as the character? How boring. Somebody who likes masturbation? I am. It's more INTP with all the emphasis on inventiveness and ingenious revelations. What is good online cognitive function test? I don't know. I don't. There's one I took before that I thought was pretty good, but I don't even remember what it was called. But I'm not thrilled with any of them. I don't think it's really possible to make an online test that really successfully types somebody because there's a certain art to it. It's not just a science until it can be falsified, but it can't yet, or at least not functionally. My dad seems like an ENTP. My grandpa might be an ENTP as well. My dad has learned many, many things, and my grandpa has done quite a few things too. My dad is pretty damn smart too. I mean, those are fine descriptions, but those don't tell you what type they are really. It's hard to glean much from just basic type descriptions like that. You got to make some sort of interpretation of their actual functions. So the guy from Stargate SG-1 is Aquasun. I'd like to have sex with each type just to experience it. All at once, Jared. That's when you really experience it. Eric, that makes sense. My TI is best, at least consciously, when it is associated with an NITE thing I'm doing directly. Yeah, maybe TE thing. I don't know about that. I don't think that's what I was saying. I think I was saying your TE is best when you're doing something that involves TI. Not a fan of TE either. I'm just into truth, not perceived notion. Okay. Well, if you are an ESTP, John Brooks, then you'd be seeking truth. If you're an ENTP, you'd be ignoring it. And it would be a validation metric for the external world. How does ENFJ utilize NI? Also, hello. Hi, Amber Braun. ENFJ utilizes NI to basically deal with all the problems in the world, which is, well, let's distill this down to its singular, most resonant interpretation. Of course, not everything really distills down, so they have a habit of over-distillation. That's to say, distilling shit that doesn't actually distill properly. If you have a chaotic or multivariant system, it's really difficult for NI to distill it down, but if it's your tool function, you'll want to always distill. You're not that deft with it, which is one of the reasons why INFJ takes a better approach towards NI, in my opinion, because it's their nature. The tool function is FE, which is an interface function, which allows them to. NIFE is a better stack than FE-NI because you want to be about distillation and utilize that nature in your interface. Makes your interface much stronger. If, on the other hand, your nature is interface and you're utilizing the distillation, it makes the distillation weaker, or it only works on some types. Let's see. I like smoking weed, but I hate dealing with the culture of it, like douchey, shady drug dealers. It isn't legal here, so I have to get it through criminal means. Yeah, that does suck. It's only pseudo-legal here. I mean, in the sense that there are stores, legal stores you don't want to go to because they're too expensive. You want to go to the shadier ones. My interpretation of it, based on what I've read, is that NE approaches things from multiple angles and gets sudden flashes of creativity because it's a static function, not a dynamic one. Well, what do you mean by static and dynamic functions? I would say it's a universalist function. That is to say, it operates in a turn-based time environment. If that's what you mean by static, you're correct. It depends on what you mean by static, Mad Biscuit. And Revelations isn't approaching in NG things from multiple angles. On benches that are ingenious. It doesn't depend on temporal progression. It connects random points present in the moment. Okay, so in other words, it's in non-linear time. I agree with that. Any is in turn-based time rather than real time. So it's got a frame rate. It updates periodically statuses, and it's conditional, so time can go both directions. But that's not really quality of the function. It's quality of the ecosystem in which the function is native. Namely, the metaphysical ecosystem has that quality for all the functions in it. They all function on a term-based time approach, and it doesn't mean that they're not dynamic. It doesn't mean that they're static. It means that they're dynamic within their own time-based modality. So it's a better way to put it, I think. But whatever. How old is Delilah? Can't you just give her the test? She is 20. Yes, she's taken various tests. She usually gets ENTP, but I don't have a lot of faith in that. I have pretty good confidence in my typing number. I think she's ENTP. I don't think she's ESTP, but I believe ESTP. Most people who want to type her as something other than ENTP, though, don't want to type her as ESTP. They want to type her as ENFP or ESFP. But she just simply isn't. You have to be wrong about TI to think that. NI is sort of slower and faster at the same time, right? You have to sit for a while sometimes for NI to do its thing, but when it does the things, it does it all at once. NE might get to the same place in the same amount of time, but it does it brute force style. RT, I don't know what RT means, but revelations and ingenious inventions are not multiple crazy generative ideas. I agree, that's NI. The thing is, though, Mad Biscuit, you got to understand that multiple crazy generative ideas, amongst them are ingenious inventions and revelations. You just have to train your NI to, after you do all the ideation, to pick through them and find the one that is snappy, you know? So Lola's not compatible with me because I need a mommy who can clean up my house. She won't do that for you, for sure. She's looking for an introvert, too. She's with an introvert right now in ISTJ, but I don't think it's going to last. I don't really like him that much, but whatever. He's just so meh. Here's a joke. Why should ENTJs not be trusted? Because they LIE. That's a funny joke. Just think about it. I like that. Revelations and ingenious inventions usually come out of nowhere, but may take a long time or not. But it isn't just piece by piece like any ink gets dropped all at once. Well, remember, I'm going to give you another example of what I just said, Mad Biscuit, which is if you're playing music and you're playing like leads over something, let's say you have a part that you want a melodic lead from the guitar on because there's no vocals in that part or something. And you might play 3 or 4 once, and then finally you'll go, oh, wait, it's supposed to be this. And then you'll play the right one. It's obvious. In that case, you've ideated your way into the truth. It's a brute force approach where NI just waits until they know what it is. They don't try random shit. It's still NI that ultimately locks it into place, though. It's not NE. It's just that NE has produced something. NE has found a way to hold hands with NI in its production process at some point in the process. You just have to work through it. I argue it is more closely related to NI. I would associate NE with the breadth of inventions networks. Like I said, you're right. And also, don't underestimate the power you're ignoring NI. I love TE, but then again, doesn't everyone love efficiency? Not really. I love convenience. I don't necessarily like efficiency when it's imposed upon me as a criterion, for sure. Do this well and efficiently, I don't like. Here's the outcome I want. Okay, you get me something that I'll be happy with. Okay, that's fine. But I don't want to be constrained to doing it efficiently. I want to do it my fucked up, stupid way, where I make a bunch of mistakes first, then tear it all down and fix it. Hulk Hogan says, you're incorrect about astrology, brother. If MBTI is valid, then astrology is too. What's your warrant? Why? That's not an argument. It's just a claim. They're not the same thing at all, because astrology links to a random number, namely your birth date and time, whereas MBTI is, forget MBTI, a cognitive function model that's properly understood is, in fact, a descriptive taxonomy of human experience. So, to the extent that astrology is a descriptive taxonomy of human experience, fine, but then it wouldn't link to those random numbers. So, whereas in cognitive function model understands, I'm going to understand you and your behavior through this lexicon of terms or analytical framework, but not define its origins or causality in anything, is very different than what astrology is doing. So, that doesn't make any sense. Carl Jung took a lot of Percocets. Well, that explains why he was into astrology. Mad Biscuit is the ESFP Queen Beast. So is Queen Beast. So is Curtis. Are there types that have an internal conflict between particularism and universalism? As I, well, no. If you have one kind of knowing on the front of the stack, then you have the other on the back of the stack. Every type has 3 physical and 1 metaphysical, or 3 metaphysical and 1 physical. And the reason for that is the so-called judging functions, TI, FE, and TEFI. Those things are each the same on their axis, whereas the so-called perceiving functions, NE, SI, and SENI, are different. So NE is metaphysical, SI is physical. SE is physical, NI is metaphysical. You have to have one of those two axes, and that puts you with 1 physical and 1 metaphysical. Then the other axis is either going to be both metaphysical or both physical. So that makes you 3 and 1 no matter who you are. And you can determine the metaphysicality or physicality of a type by looking at the order of functions, and whether it's like INFJ and ENTP are both metaphysical, 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 physical. So we're about as metaphysical as you can get. Whereas ISFP and ESFP are as physical as you can get. They go physical, 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 metaphysical. So they're as least meaning oriented in terms of any kind of universality of meaning, and as much physicality or experience oriented as any two types can be. And ENTP and INFJ are the opposite. They're as little physicality, experience oriented, and as much meaning oriented as two types can be. Which is why, for me, balance requires me to sometimes stop doing this and go clean up around the house and do other things that are physical world stuff, because it helps me to feel whole or complete or satisfied, because I'm not just ideating. There's a correlation with IQ, but Eric hates it when we talk about IQ. Does that mean NI people are smarter since they don't have to put in as much mental effort? It means it really depends on how they train their NI. Some people with NI can believe all kinds of incredibly dumb stuff, like lots of conspiracies that don't withstand any TI scrutiny, because they're prioritizing their NI over and not fulfilling their third function, hidden agenda TI, if they're INFJ or something like that. There probably is a correlation between IQ and those things, but I don't find that very meaningful for reasons I've already articulated. NI is this way is very reminiscent of the turquoise tier and spiral dynamics. It's holistic and keeps track of the big picture. Okay, well, NI does that in general, but most importantly, what it does is it keeps tracks of meanings and patterns and archetypes and stuff. NE might give you more pieces of the puzzle that could lead you to future solution once NI hits an impasse. He does that as well. It depends which angle you're coming from. If you're coming from NE first, NI is always going to come in and save the day from your mess that has ceased to become productive. Now you're just tweaking out, throwing out random shit that's all garbage. NI will come in to save the day and say, you're done here. If you're NE first, that's how it works. But if you're NI first, then it probably works like that. NI hits an impasse and NE comes and saves the day with some more ideas. Astrology has no backing at all. I'm not one to need credentials to believe or look into something. Right. Yeah. It's easy enough to look into it to understand that it doesn't have a fundamental warrant to justify its conclusion. There's no reason to believe that being born on this certain time with stars in a certain alignment decides what kind of person you are or how your behavior is. There's just no explanation for why that should be the case. There's no reason to think that would be the case. It's just linking to random events. Eric, how did you get into MBTI? When did you first hear about it? I first heard about it when I was in my early 30s, and determined I was an ENTP, then put it away because I didn't hear anything about cognitive functions. And when I returned to it, when I started making a YouTube channel, I read about it. I made a video about it one day, and it did pretty well. So I started keep doing more videos about cognitive functions and stuff, and started reading about it and stuff like that. It was a lot more interesting once I found out about cognitive functions. If you talk about the letter dichotomies and MBTI, there's not much depth to it, and that's why I didn't get very into it the first time. I mean, I was into it very briefly the first time. Like, oh my God, I'm this. This explains it. I read a bunch of type descriptions, then there's nothing else to do with it. Astrology is magical thinking. That's true. It doesn't necessarily make it invalid inherently, but you should have your magical thinking properly positioned in your meta frame. It's so legit. We ought to run our world around this, to be honest. This depth psychology should be guiding how we run our schools, jobs, and how we raise our kids. It's unfortunate it's not the case. I mean, I would agree with you that we need to respect the fact that individuals are expressions of a certain nature and type, and they're going to necessarily be better able to do certain kinds of things and worse able to do certain kinds of things, and stop trying to hold everybody to this universal standard that only applies to nobody, but parts of it apply better to other people than others. People who would debate this most strongly regarding the traditionalists, the same people whose natural personality are more readily accepted by society, and meanwhile, NI Dom isn't. Well, I mean, I agree that the traditionalists and anybody who thinks that if it's not broke, don't fix it, or don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, any of those kind of aphorisms is going to oppose any kind of radical restructuring. So, if this became a common parlance way of talking and analyzing things and going about life, if FE came into the common parlance in some sort of expression, like you just FE in that, then we'd start to make some progress because people would begin to have the analytical scaffolding that they need to comprehend things what I would consider more fully or more properly. I am learning about spiral dynamics, so I can instill it into my education system and creating that I will implement into Africa. Good. Shape all those Africans into spiral shapes. Literally, we have to be insincere, fake, and wear masks all the time. Sure, we can't all be our true selves and express what we really think all the time, but some have to hide less than others. I don't feel I have to hide much. I feel I'm pretty transparent, pretty much as I am all the time. Lots of people from the channel have met me, and I think they'll all tell you that I'm exactly the same in person as I am here. I can show a personal natal reading if you want an example. Well, are you talking about astrology? That's not a reason to believe it to be the case. The same reason I am learning about cognitive functions as well. It's a good thing to learn about. Why did you in your book say that INFJs are the most metaphysical type of them all when ENFPs are also 3 metaphysical functions first 2? Because action is a less metaphysical kind of metaphysical being than knowing is. In other words, it's like NE has more of a link to the physical world through SE, as NE gets a lot of its nubs from SE. Whereas you might say NI gets the data that it's considering from SE, but it's all converted into some symbols and objects of analysis before it's even considered. I don't know, it just seemed more metaphysical to me. It seems like if you're going in levels of deliberativeness, the most metaphysical would be deliberation. Second most would be knowledge. Third most would be interface, and least most would be action in terms of levels of deliberativeness. So in that regard, I think that the INFJ is more metaphysical because they're more deliberative, basically. If NI keeps track of meanings, then what is NE's relationship with meaning? NE creates new meanings, and NI sees what's there, sees the pattern that can be there from the existing component pieces that maybe not have been distilled yet. NE sees what's not there for any distillation. Okay, well, here's ways that distillation could be wrong, is NETI. Or here's ways in which my personal interested calculus might vary from this distillation. Uniqueness destroys versus contradiction destroys. So any creates new meanings, and it's creational. It's not discoverance. I can tell you the process by which I create things. The discovering process is when I create something and recognize that it's uniquely resonant in some way, or that it sings or flies or pops. And that's in writing or music or anything else. So it does create new meanings, but if for certain things more than others, you have to rely on more or less NI to distill those meanings down into the ones that are worth expressing. And that's the hard part for ENTPs and takes a long time to do. That's why they do well with fluid-based IQ tests, because it's all about pattern recognition. From my knowledge, NI is pattern seeking, whereas NE is idea seeking. There's not really a distinction there to be made. The difference would be a pattern is a set of ideas that can't be deconstructed or reduced any further. So if I tell you, well, this is your hero function, the pattern is the hero, the idea is the hero. It's a set of ideas about what it means to be heroic and what it means to be the lead character and lots of other connotations associated with that. You can deconstruct it somewhat and say, well, these would be qualities that are exclusive of the hero, but you can't say entirely, with this one thing, you become a hero, or without this one thing, you cease to be a hero. It doesn't deconstruct like that. It's holistic. It's still an idea, and it's still a pattern. It's an archetype. So the point being that certain ideas are deconstructible or parsable, and certain ideas are holistic and they attain their completion by the sum of their parts. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. If you look at a car engine, for example, the whole thing can be perfect, but if I pull out this one hose, it won't work at all, right? You have to have everything in place and all the relationships right, and then and only then will it propel the car forward. In that regard, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You put all those engine parts together, you got an engine. But if you put them all together right, it actually propels a car. So that's what I mean by holistic things. You can't really answer the question, what makes the car go forward? Well, the engine. Well, what makes the engine make the car go forward? Well, it's a whole bunch of complicated things that all interplay and all are necessary, or else it won't work. So you can't answer that question exactly, right? It's because it's a whole that can't really be reduced. I think FE polar has a correlation with Asperger's. That's what my theory is that FE polar has a correlation with Asperger's, specifically INTJ, because ISTJ is more individually grounded through their animal self, and that's why they're less likely to be Asperger's. Yes, NI will correlate with Asperger's, but it's going to be NITE that correlates with Asperger's. It's not NI itself, and it's not TE itself. It's both of them combined. So that's why it is polar FE, and it's also correlated with NI, because then you've got holistic abstractions that are systems based to the exclusion of any reasonable understanding of social systems, and that causes you to seem very autistic-y. Patterns are a bunch of coincidences that just so happens to have connection with one another. That's that sentence. I don't know what to make of that sentence. Patterns are not coincidences. They're meaning frames that are placed upon instances of data. So, for example, if you're at a party and everybody's giving you dirty looks, and eventually you realize that everyone's mad at you, and then later on you remember, oh, it's because I beat up this person whom everybody there was good friends with. And then the pattern will click for you and go, okay, that's why everybody's mad at me. That's a pattern recognition. It's not a coincidence that that pattern fits. It's directly responsible. You can directly attribute it to the fact that you beat up that kid. That's what everybody's mad at you about. Now, you can either be right or wrong about that. It turns out, no, everybody actually hated that kid. What they were really mad about was the fact that he wore a pink shirt to this party when the invitation had said in big bold letters, no pink shirts. So, okay, then now you've got a new pattern that maybe you recognize. Again, it's not coincidental. It's attributing correctly some meaning set to a thing. That's what pattern recognition is. If I go, complete the pattern, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, chances are you'd say 13. And the reason is because I'm doing odd numbers, and you recognize the pattern, right? Now, that would be the correct answer by anybody's calculus. You might be able to come up with another correct answer, but it wouldn't be indicated by the piece of information I gave you. So pattern recognition is not coincidences. It's how you interpret data from the world. And sometimes you correctly interpret it as representing a pattern, sometimes not. What happens when NI runs wild is they say, well, here are some things in the world that seem fishy. I'm going to presume that there's a motivated party behind it that's secretly pulling the strings and running everything. And that's where you get crazy conspiracy theories from. In that instance, you're right. You've got coincidences, quote unquote, that are being connected incorrectly by pattern recognition. So one thing that we can know is that pattern recognition is more reliable on a particularist level than it is on a universalist level, because you can always check the particularist against your own interest. But of course, pattern recognition is only useful in a communicable sense when it's resonant on a universal level. So there's always going to be wiggle room. Nothing's going to be unable to be critiqued. And to expect that something is unable to be critiqued in order to think it has more or less validity than something else is insane. Obviously, there's going to be different levels of critiquability, and that's why we have something called rhetorical slope. It's easier to make certain kind of claims than others. Evelyn, that's true. The whiteboard doesn't say so, but if you remember the criteria on the previous whiteboard, I think you'd say I still meet those criteria. Hey, Cameron, nice to see you here. ISTJ Cameron is here. He loves those animals. He's a good friend of mine. I haven't seen him in a while. I want to hang out with you again soon, Cameron. Anyway, you'll hear me talk about Cameron in plenty of videos. Well, I like my ISTJ friend Cameron. Well, this is him. He's here. He's our IRL friend. How are patterns coincidences? That one didn't even take off for me. Yeah. Evelyn, very true. LG, we should go to CS Joseph Livestream. I hear he has a huge whiteboard and we get cognitive superpowers. Of course you should. I don't know Queen Beach. I know that tropical map to MBTI, but that's more astrology stuff. I get the idea from the show Lucifer. I agree with it. Why would you agree with that crazy idea when I just defeated it completely? I mean, I explained to you how any reasonable calculus of the matter explains it like this, that there are different kinds of correlations and different kinds of pattern recognitions and stuff like that. There's no reason to continue to agree with your position once I've defeated it and you haven't responded to it. What physical features do you associate with ENFJs? They look exactly like you, Curtis. Green Beast, I was trolling about being ESFP, but I don't know. You don't seem like an ESFP, but it would make sense still. It's not even as complex as Eric is making it out to be. Also depends how you count as coincidence or pattern. How many times does it happen? How often does it need to happen before it happens? Before it becomes a pattern to you? and how have you instantiated it? So is it linked directly to an instance for you or not? That's going to be, the context. People make determinations in some context and not in a vacuum. We try to attribute these statuses to things as though they occurred in vacuums, but they never did. ENFJs, I would say, in terms of males, would exude very masculine characteristics. Probably a little like insecurity displayingly so, and potentially. Queen, you need to watch ENFP-ish based on the video. You seem ENFP-ish based on the videos you watch. I think guy ENFJs are usually sort of effeminate. I think they compensate. And you can probably tell, Queen Bees, that they're compensating. ENFJs are annoying. They're not all annoying. I like Matthew a lot. I think he's an ENFJ, and I vouch for him as a good guy and pleasant to hang out with, and I like him. And I have met other ENFJs. I think, Megan Lavota's pretty cute. I wouldn't kick her out of bed for eating crackers, as they say. Yeah, she's cute. She's loafy. RT, the one thing I could draw is that we have good connection, which makes sense with INTJ, ESFP duality, which I'm still researching, but I don't know. Okay, need more data. Curtis is too FE for ESTP. I say ENFP for you, Queen. Coincidences are things that happen as a result of something. So basically, they're results. Okay, an instance or an incident is an instantiation of some sort of an event. Coincidence means two instances happen at the same time. That's what it means, literally. When we say a coincidence, it could be a coincidence that has a strong correlation. It could be a coincidence that also has a causal relationship, even. In which case, there's nothing coincidental about it. Coincidence just means two instances happen at the same time. So they're typically described as having little or no explanation, but nonetheless, they are still coincidences. You're not understanding. Just because you pick two instances first and say these happen at the same time, were they causally related or happen in a close time link? The lightning struck in the sky, and then I found my keys. We're talking about two instances, and you're asking, is there a causal link? Is there a strong correlation? Or is it a coincidence, which means just two instances that happen to be near each other in time? In that instance, in that example, it's a coincidence. In other words, lightning striking doesn't consistently correlate with me finding my keys. If that were to happen, every time lightning struck, I found some keys. Well, then that'd be a strong correlation. And if we could establish a mechanism that bore out hypothetical testings, then we could even potentially say that lightning striking causes you to find your keys. Of course, there is no such mechanism, and there would not be established such a correlation. Lightning strikes all the time, but you only sometimes find keys and only sometimes have lost keys. So that would be coincidental. However, if lightning strikes you and you get badly burned, that's not a coincidence. It's also not just a strong correlation. There's a distinct causal relationship in that instance. The lightning has struck you, causing you to get burned.
Evie's starting to attack the cats.
Who is?
Evie.
Smack her when she does.
Did. It's twice today.
The shit that sparks is in the realm of what would mine either. I tend to gravitate towards any speakers. I find their everything better, and I find their jokes better, even. There's no doubt in your mind. If a person suffers from depression, do you think they could live in their shadow and improve their shadow functions? And if so, when they get out of depression, could this make it hard to type them? I don't believe in this living in your shadow function stuff at all. I think if you're depressed, you're probably in your fourth function a lot more than you otherwise would be. So if you're a depressed ENTP, you're going to be sleeping a lot. You're going to be not very ideationally active and stuff.
What about me?
I mean, I don't think in whatever state you are, Kim, that I would type you as anything what you are once I get to know you a little bit, because...
Can you imagine me in that state
of depression?
Absolute depression. Like, actually, like I was with Schmitty. But for, like...
I mean, at that point, I'd say you're in a period of grief, and it's not an appropriate time to type you. because you're going to be displaying different during active grief. You know, once you pass the grief period, you return to normal. I think active grief is a little different than depression. Depression being something like grief, but not linked, I guess, to anything specific.
No, but I'm
Hand me that
saying,
yellow
yeah,
bottle,
no,
please.
but what I'm saying is my depression was like that. The only thing I could, because I haven't had an episode in so many years that's the best I could explain. That's about how it was when I was in my deepest depression.
But it
For
linked,
no reason at all.
it linked to some life events, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to link to life events. It's obviously going to be hard to type people who are in a state of depression.
Plus now I'm medicated.
All right. So, okay, I'm going to pull this bowl and are you talking about the ENFJ woman who's amazing at typing? You're talking about Megan Lavoda? I don't think she's amazing at typing, but she turns on Mad Biscuit. Yeah, she's pretty sexy. I looked up the definition of the word coincidence. I found two different meanings. The first is a remarkable occurrence or event of circumstances without apparent causal connection. Okay, so that would be the coincidence that says it seems like there must be a connection because of some ideational link, but really there isn't. So that would be more. That would be, instead of like the lightning strikes and finding your keys, it would be like lightning strikes and then that night you win a big jackpot at the casino. And then the next time you go, lightning strikes again and you win another big jackpot. And you're sure there must be some sort of magic going. But it's really just coincidence. Casual observations, but I mean, I use YouTube for some dumb fun more than anything else, so I don't think it may be the best way to type someone. However, I have considered being ENFP before. Her name is Sarah MBTI. Okay, I'll have to check it out. Okay, any comments before we wrap it up here?
Do someone who is always in grief can't be typed? Says Matthew. Oh, I hate that. But then drink another beer, Matthew.
Someone who is always in grief, but like it's a series of first this loved one dies, then that one, so they never end grieving periods. It's pretty tragic. Yeah, correspondence in nature or in time of occurrence is what I said. Incidences occurring at the same time, concurrency. Or in sequence. Often in sequence. So
do I.
For example, the fallacy post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means after, therefore, because of, is a fallacy of misunderstanding the nature of correlation and causality. So that I woke up this morning my alarm went off. Later that day, it was a nice sunny day. Good thing my alarm went off, or it would have been a rainy day for everybody. Well, no, there's no link there at all. That's a post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy because it assumes just because something happens after something else that the first thing caused it. So that would be an example of misunderstanding the nature of coincidence, correlation, and causality. Every time I bong rip, you get scared. Why is it scary? Why is it scary when I bong rip? Do you fear that I'll sweat my brains out? Kim?
If it does die, it'll be a bong rip combustion.
Yeah. Yeah, take a break from all the cognitive function stuff. Time for a song. I'm gonna smoke the bong rip, and then I'm gonna play a song, and then I'm gonna smoke a bong rip, and then I'm gonna play another song.
That's my cue to leave here, 'cause that's all I hear these days. Is Eric's voice a kickling and cackling, whether on this place or in any other space. in the bathtub, on the toilet, while he's having sex with me, driving in the car on the freeway.
Yeah, my name is Kimberly.
I am in support of it.
So, before I say goodbye tonight, I'm going to play a couple songs here on the guitar. Kind of need to practice some. I'm going to be playing some gigs. That's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to start today with this song called What's the Matter with Dan?
Why always that one?
I never play that one. What are you talking about?
Oh.
I haven't played that in ages. It doesn't matter what I would have played.
You're right.
You would have bitched about it in some way. That's just your nature.
I'm such a bitch.
Kinda.
Yay.
Well, that's okay. You're a special lady anyway. Don't you worry, pretty little head about it. There we go. What's the matter with Chad? Is he terribly bad? Is he very like Dan, who's a terrible man? Is he sort of like Jill, who can't pay her bill? Or rather like Jack, he's stuck on the facts. Let me turn this down a little bit. It keeps clipping on everything. So I'm going to start this over with the lower levels here. Probably like there is good. Here we go. Okay, hopefully that's better. What's the matter with Chad? Is he terribly bad? Is he very like Dan, who's a terrible man? Is he sort of like Jill, who can't pay her bill? Or rather like Jack, he's stuck on the facts. And what about Sue? Will she know what to do if they bring attitude? Does she show ingenuity? He talks about you whenever we go walking. What's the matter with Lynn? She's been living in sin. She's been hanging with Jim, looking terribly thin. What's the deal with Frank? Here's my tank. He's colluding with you. He's there with you. Around with the ladies. What's the matter with men? From the beauty of Katie to the coldness of Sven. He talks about you whenever we go walking. As it lead to lesser days, as it lead to lesser days, we'll fill out the overwatered past. And whoever's left that's still okay, just tie the sails to the mast. Are you angry at Ken or Neville again? Don't bother with Kev, he's practically dead. Just focus on Bert, he's medium hurt. What's the quantity for Liz? Did she fail a quiz? And what about Drew? And what about Drew? Will she know what to do if they bring attitude? Will she show ingenuity? She talks about you whenever we go walking. As it lead to lesser days, as that lead to lesser days, we'll still out the overwatered past. And whoever's left that's still okay, just tie the sails to the mast. 'Cause each of us have much and gravely sinned. Throw up the hands, stiffen the chin, Catastrophe looms heavy overhead again. Time's gone. Never be again. That's a challenging song. I haven't played it in a while. It's a little bit rough, but not terrible.
I'm exhausted from dancing.
Let's see what else I got here in the old list of songs to play. I think I'll play El Nino next, which I have memorized. Out of 10. Just that one.
Ow.
There we go. El Nino, my ass. You call those storms? Where is the rain? Those drizzles don't count. I drizzle more when I pee in the sink. And it's just the right height. Catch all the undesired splatter. And when I'm done, I'll go outside and climb a ladder. And I will go up there and take me a bucket and pour water inside. And I'll say, hey, Mr. Cloud, won't you drop it from the bottom? Hey, Mr. Cloud, won't you drop it from the bottom? Hey, Mr. Cloud, drop it from the bottom on me. Okay, so that was called El Nino, my ass. Thank you, Matthew. Your taste in music is impeccable. Next, I think I'm going to play. Let's see. I think I will play. When I was younger, it seemed that everything gleamed. I don't know what happened to me, but I've lost that sense of urgency, and I don't think that I'll ever see it again. If you follow my lead, you'll discover I'm loster than you, and you'll want to know the way to get back out to wherever it was you thought you knew. And tomorrow will be just like today. I'll be lost in two. It's a matter of mood as much as a matter of will. And the things I do and the direction I point to still seem a part of me, though departed. And I wonder if I'll ever see them again. That was called Matter of Mood. I'll play probably one more. I'm going to play the song I've been playing a lot lately. I've been enjoying playing it. I'm going to play it again. It goes like this. There's a need now to know the inside of a soul. It bothers a lot of us. I need to see if potentiality deserves our intentional thrust. I need to see happening down by us some means to judge and the logic to life we divisively unlike and from which we'll rarely budge. People everywhere gather up, enemies outraged at how they miss the sign. How do they set their priorities? These foreign backstabbing entities, ensuing heartache and misery, follow necessarily from their savage ways. Insulting, cursing, and Desiree, we're stuck in such petty larceny. We all partition directories and call it destruction of the whole damn world. Judy shares now her limits, hoping Judy will shoot. Jerry shares for 4 minutes. We just can't check things like they do. Judy always thought that she should have got to when she had the chance to buy. Julie soon forgot about should and ought, although she I recall that. People everywhere gather up, enemies outraged at how they missed a sign. How do they set their priorities? These foreign backstabbing entities, ensuing heartache and misery, follow necessarily from their savage ways. Insulting, cursing, and Desiree, we're stuck in such petty larceny. We all partition directories and call it destruction of the whole damn world. Oh. Explosions. Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. I'm just going to wrap it up.
Somebody's asking for Gospel of the Pantheon.
Gospel of the Pantheon. Oh, you mean it was 100,000 million years ago? I don't know how to play that. I have no idea how to play that song. Most of my songs I don't know how to play. You have to remember that. So I make them and then I don't know how to play them. I have to follow the music, or if I don't write it down, then I don't remember. I have to refigure out how to play it, which is kind of stupid on my part. Anyway, thank you very much for the applause, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for sticking around to listen to my songs. That's very flattering. I figured I'd lose more people than I did, and I'm grateful for those of you who stuck around. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later. Have a good evening.